I began to put my own tourniquet on. Dude, it was terrible.
It's that training. You're like, oh.
America should have the best prosthetics.
I did all this myself.
Antonio Stark over here.
Dude, how many arms do you have?
One.
They're thinking I'm gonna die, and I'm like yelling at them.
You're like in and out of consciousness. You're still a dickhead, dude. Yeah, pop it. Pop. Are you a big drinker?
I do drink.
You gotta wait.
I do. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Wait till we come down.
I'm so sorry.
Damn it, military guys.
God.
You lose one arm, you think you're special.
God damn it.
He told me to. Oh, God.
All right. We ready to pop this off?
Yeah. 3,
right.
2, 1. Ah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unsubscribe podcast. I'm joined today by Eli Double Tap Space Tejano. Right? Is that what you wanted me to introduce you
Yeah,
as?
Tejano Space Cowboy.
Tejano Space Cowboy. Sorry, I got that. I messed it up again. Brandon Herrera, myself, Donald Operator. Thank you for joining in.
Hey, it's so good to see you, dude. Okay. We've met in the past, and I completely, sent, I think, I was like, hey, we should have Sebastian on. I was like, yeah. I was like, looking, I was like, I swear I've met this dude before. And I think the first time we met, I made a joke or something, and then you're like, huh? You didn't know me at that point, so you're like,
no.
oh, he's just an asshole.
Where was
just an
this?
asshole. That was at the old the ranch, the cooking show. We were at the cooking show. I want to say,
Oh, no shit,
was it
okay.
the cooking show?
I was with Logan, and because Logan was in 3.5, and I just remember it was content
Yeah.
house, and I had a blue arm I had a different arm at that time. It was a really ghetto. It was a gigantic arm, so it was like really hard to like be low key in that arm. It was like fucking the size of a leg.
Dude, how many arms do you have?
I have
One.
Yeah, I have one. Technically, you know what? Like,
Jesus.
It does get confusing when people, because you're like, how many arms what do you have? Real arms? I was like, to me, I was like, this is a real arm to me. But I have 3 prosthetics. Just based on like which ones actually work right now, but that one I have it. It's like it was like decommissioned, but I don't consider it like in use because it was so huge. It's really hard for me to move around with and stuff like that. Because if you remember, it was gigantic. It looked like something from a fucking anime because it was so big.
It was the Mark 1 version of like Ironman.
Yeah, it was a gigantic arm, and it was like the first time that the VA in San Antonio had ever built an upper extremity prosthetic. So they were terrible at it, and that kind of began my journey on like getting into prosthetics myself, because I didn't know that not everybody could build prosthetics, upper extremity prosthetics, at the level of like the best people.
It's crazy. So the VA is definitely
they're terrible.
We have the money, we just don't want to spend that much of it.
Yeah, it's
Go on,
that's
Brandon.
a whole fucking.
I was just going to say,
There's
with
a
the
joke.
VA, it's like, oh, yeah, you saw the joke face. It's not as much of a joke as it is just sad. It's like, oh, we'd rather spend it on administrative staff, bulletins, and talk about how to use pronouns on the high level in the VA. Yeah, your arm, you don't really need that, but we really need these bulletins, you know?
Yeah, like I fucking I would really love to talk about the VA at some point, but yeah, because
Well,
I
I'm
feel
sure
like
we'll get there, brother.
I feel bad talking about my situation, but this arm would not have come if the VA wasn't doing such a bad job. Because this guy who built this arm heard about my story and heard about my difficulty getting prosthetics from the VA. No background in prosthetics, and he built this for me from scratch. And his background was aerospace, and so yeah, the VA. Like I always tell people, oh, the VA guy. Because I get a lot of that. Like the VA made it. I was like, this has nothing to do with the VA. The VA did not do this. This is not it's a different level of prosthetic. But
I'm just noticing things like the Picatinny on the thumb.
yeah, I put that on there. I got that from people commented on TikTok for me to put a rail on there, and I was like for a flashlight, and I had done that before lower, but I didn't do this. I never want to insult the guy who made this work. I mean, I did this. He did all this other stuff. I did this because I wanted to take a bite out of this notch right here because I'm a dad, and whenever I carry my son, this notch would dig into his back. So I just wanted to soften up that notch, and you can see I tried to build up. But
You put a little PEC unit on it, so if anybody pisses you off, you could just blind them with IR.
yeah, I do put it on there.
Let's rewind. So Tell your story. I know probably a bunch of people have heard it through your social media. But what year did you enlist?
I joined the Marine Corps in 2007.
Damn, you were an OG. You did surge time then.
No.
You're in
Afghanistan.
Surge? Yeah. Okay. So
Afghanistan surge. Yeah. I think I always say Iraq was a little bit before my time. I joined the Marine Corps to go to Afghanistan, and specifically the Taliban. I still tell people, I still think they're terrible people, and you kind of have to like educate people about why they're terrible people to like explain, like what they're doing to women. But yeah, I joined in 2007 specifically for the Taliban. And I was wounded in the surge in 2010 in Sangin, Helmand Province, Afghanistan.
It was an IED blast?
Yeah, stepping into a canal. And I actually don't talk about it that much on my social media just because I it's something that you like, like you just don't talk about it because it's like, for me, it just recently passed, and to commemorate, like whenever I talk about it, like,
day.
Yeah, I lost my squad leader. And as it gets further away, it gets easier to talk about. But like, whenever you have that kind of thing, it's not something that I talk about just because we lost so many people there. Dark Horse, we lost so many Marines that I feel like I don't like talking about it just because like it's kind of like to people, because you don't want to take them to a dark place. Civilians, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of my stuff is like kids are asking questions and stuff like that. And so, like, I'll explain to them, like, Avengers and stuff like. You don't take them to, like, I don't know. They don't want to know, all the darkness. But specifically, like, to me, whenever I was wounded, I was a rifle team leader. And stepping into a canal, my squad leader took the brunt of the blast. It was a submerged IED. And like, all of the shit tied to that. Whenever I think about when I was wounded, I don't think about me. I think about, a little girl who doesn't have a dad. So that's something that I think later on got easier for me to talk about, but people were like, why I didn't always talk about it was because like, I'm so close to with all my Gold Star families that it's not something that I was like, it
didn't feel appropriate to talk about?
Yeah, because to them, they're like, you're inundated with family members asking you questions about like their son's last moments and stuff like that. So you kind of feel like, it's not just my story.
It's that hard one because it's going through those, experiencing yourself, and then how do you handle that? You ask yourself the questions, how do I honor them? And then it is that older man. It's like the World War II vets you always hear. It's like, oh, Grandpa wouldn't talk about his war stories. You have some that talk about it with more ease, and then some people like yourself where you're like, it's not my story to tell. But as time goes on, you're healing through it.
Yeah.
You're coming to terms with it, and now you're like, okay, I can start talking about this or explaining it.
It was a different generation too. Like my grandfather would just drink and beat my grandma. So
spending time with Vietnam veterans really made me feel like, oh, I'm doing okay. Because like I'm like, they're like, I know POWs who are like, they went to fucking prison. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, and he was drafted into Vietnam, and I didn't know anything about his military service. And one of the reasons I joined the Marine Corps was I resented how quiet he was. He didn't speak at all. And then now, as an adult later on in life, I understood like, oh, like, they were spit on, and so they had this shame and stuff like that. But talking to Vietnam veterans, like so many of them, especially the combat veterans, they spent time in prison, bars, fights, and stuff like that. And I know that from my own people. We have some of those people too. It definitely is a different generation.
What was when coming to terms with that, now that you're saying, hey, later in life it is becoming easier to talk about, what was one of those turning points for you to make that possible?
For me, becoming a dad really, really changed, like, because I think before I was so prideful. I was so I especially talking to my Gold Star families, like I didn't tell them everything that happened until my son was born. And then I was like, oh, you should really know every detail about your son.
What was the time gap there?
My son's two years old, so about like 8-10 years. Because even in college, I went to UIW, and I remember like taking pride in my professors not knowing that I was military, because that arm was so, it was like, it's got a Catrina Calavera on it. It's like a Mexican sugar skull. And I just remember one time her telling my professor that I had to like miss something for a VA appointment, and she was like, VA, what's that? And I was like, oh, it's like you can't get out of those. And she was like, what's the VA? And I was like, it's the veterans whatever hospital. And she was like, I didn't even know you were a veteran. And
you had a college professor ask you what the VA is.
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus fucking
Yeah.
Christ, dude.
it's a private school. Nothing. UIW is a very rich, good, great education. But I think that like, she wasn't originally from America too. So, I guess I'm always surprised by like people who don't have exposure to
Academics.
academia.
Yeah.
Academia is something
Hey.
That's
People who lived a very insulated life.
their own very. It is a private school,
Those
so
smart
it is
people.
yeah.
Okay.
This
super-
poor Hispanic just born with only one
Yeah, that's
arm.
what she thought, and I was like,
What? The fuck,
Yeah.
white lady?
Let me guess, a lawnmower accident.
That weed eater just popped back up, man.
She brings the prosthetic with the weed eater attached. I got you this.
By the way, I'm free on Thursdays.
Yeah, what's your schedule like?
yeah. Ironic. I did break my other arm mowing the lawn, and that was something that was funny. Like everybody's like, "Why are you mowing your own lawn?" And I'm like, "I'm fucking Mexican. Like I don't know. It's not like I'm going to pay somebody to mow my lawn."
Fuck that.
Holy this is the first time I'm a minority on the podcast.
That's true, yeah. 3 browns and a white.
Viva La Raza, am I right?
Yeah. So
Oh man. So you were like, okay, we going through that, started opening up to your kiddos. Did you open up? When did you start talking about it? I'm assuming just with your friends, if you did speak about the incident, and then around the new friends, was it ever talked about?
so new
or-
friends is something that's like, it's really it's a weird space because like I mean like a lot of my friends weren't veterans and stuff like that, so I just didn't feel like inclined to like a lot of my life I would just lie. Like there's people in this world who believe like I was a shark attack victim, motorcycle. I would just lie just to like avoid the conversations for a
It's
long
also
time.
hilarious.
Yeah, I mean because it's like it just makes it easier for not have to negotiate like all those emotions. So it's just easier to lie. I swear to God, I've told people that for the longest time. Like I always say, whenever I was in the hospital, I used to have an arm that I had a shark on it, and I put sharkattackvictims.org on it for real. And that one famous surfer came by the therapy center, and all of the occupational therapists and physical therapists were like trying to
Soul Surfer?
they try to push her my way. It's like, you need to talk to this one guy, you see his arm. And I was like, I was so scared. So after that, I was like, no, they're real shark attack victims, so you can't like. And I think one of them like hit me up on Instagram. Like there's an Australian shark attack victim, but so I stopped using that specific trope.
Skill issue.
Shark-born IED.
Yeah, because I used to tell people that because it was just
Slam
the
up and blew
funniest
up.
thing. And
She,
it's just
she
like,
just comes up. It's like her, like the Make-A-Wish kind of thing. She's like, oh, well, what kind of shark were yours? Taliban.
Middle Eastern sharks. I don't know.
Middle
Taliban
Eastern
head?
sand shark.
When there's like the Red Sea, I think there's sharks in the Red Sea somewhere, or something like
Did
that.
you just discover a new slur?
Sand shark.
Well, I was wounded in the water, so it was like
Actually, all right, that's very funny. Then.
yeah, it was just something that it was a natural, because I did have a fear of the water when I first got injured because I was drowning. Yeah, I was drowning for like what was like 5 minutes because they didn't know I was injured because I was a team leader, and so everybody everybody was like confused, and my squad leader obviously got injured too, so everybody was confused. So that Mexican arm, I call that it was an ode to Huitzilopochtli, and Huitzilopochtli is the Aztec god of war and the sun, and so it's blue, and so whenever I was wounded, I was drowning, and all I could see was the sun, and it was so beautiful. In Afghanistan, like where it's you're like some parts in the middle of the desert. For me, it was all green, and so I would open my eyes, and it was like super beautiful water, and the sun kept poking in my eyes. And so I thought I was dreaming because it was so beautiful. And like I think about that still to this day, think about it, the beauty of it. And that the sun kept flickering in my eyes and it wouldn't let me go to sleep. And then I realized that I was drowning because I saw blood flow, and I couldn't move I didn't know I was missing my arm, so I was like trying to grab to try to stop drowning, but I was drowning for so long that like even after I got out of the surgeries and stuff like that, I was in the hospital for like 3 years. After everything, my therapist told me at the time that the things that I was scared of the water, but I couldn't even close my eyes in the shower because I was so scared of drowning. I had no idea that was a drowning thing until a therapist explained to me. I would get bloodshot eyes from not being able to close them in the shower because I was so scared of closing my eyes in the water.
Just entirely subconscious, or like?
Yeah, I had no idea it was a thing until he brought it up. And I was like, yeah, I do get blood. My eyes will go bloodshot just from refusing to close them, just even in the shower. But I was born in San Antonio, so like I couldn't get close to the Riverwalk, and water was a real big issue for me. And then like I conquered it later. I did triathlons and stuff like that.
I mean, very specifically, I mean, the IED was a canal, right?
Yeah, it was in a canal.
Which is wild by itself.
Yeah,
That's
like these mother
fucking
truckers.
I've never even heard
wild.
of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
they're so tricky because because you were in Afghanistan, right?
Iraq.
Okay, well, but you're like, I think that a lot of people, I'll take it as an insult when I've had people, I think sometimes trying to pay a compliment to Americans, they'll insult the Taliban's fighting capacity. And I was like, no, like don't do that. You take away from them how hard it was to fight them when you do that, because they were so intelligent and like complex ambushes. But like, so they would put it in the water because like, they'll be like, we were dismounted everywhere in Sangin. And so they would put them in the water because like they're like, the Marines are not like these other guys. They will cross the worst possible terrain possible to avoid IEDs. So like we would never take roads, never take open spaces. In theory, that's what you're trained to do. And so they would submerge the IEDs in the water because they're like, these guys are going to cross and go in the worst possible terrain possible. So towards the end of the war, it was like the opposite, go on roads, because they learned from your little tricks of like, just cutting through these cornfields and like going in and out of the canal in the worst possible area. And that's where they started to put the IEDs because, like you wouldn't think that when I tell people that I was fully submerged in water when I got hit, they're like, how? And I'm like, oh yeah, they're really, really tricky, not just with their IEDs, but also like their
Tactics.
Yeah, they're super.
Yeah.
I just get a little bit insulted when people are like, they're stupid, they're cowards. I was like, no, they defeated, I don't think they beat up, we killed 600 Taliban and they killed 30 of us. Those, when you put the number, you just quantify it like that.
But it's amazing what happens when you have no rules to fight with.
Yeah, that's what people don't understand. Like we could have just destroyed, leveled that place. And I think that sometimes whenever I talk to people, especially internationally, like they don't realize that the infantry exists because America is putting a human toll on the war.
Yeah.
And it's like we could just level these cities, but we didn't do that. We put men with kids and women with families on the lines so we could mitigate casualties instead of just dropping 500-pound bombs on there.
Look at the difference between America going into Afghanistan versus when Russia went into Afghanistan.
Yeah,
you got a massive gap there.
Yeah, we just don't do that anymore. And as you're saying, it is like to pay testament to that fighting force, Iraq, Afghanistan. It's always that. It's like, what would you guys, like the U.S., what would you do if you had to fight the U.S. Military? There's nothing you can do. It's like, I assure you, they did quite fine with AKs and IEDs. They created, what, $12 trillion war?
Yeah.
$9 trillion. Yeah. Yeah, just because they had AKs and that they didn't need air support, they didn't need any of that stuff. It's like, okay, we just use guerrilla tactics and...
Yeah, their willingness, like, because, like, I mean, my biggest thing is, like, dealing with the injured civilians, their willingness to put civilians, like, in danger is something that it's, like, talking to some veterans from that area, still to this day, like, because we lost 111, there was 111 Royal Marines killed in Sangin before we got there and replaced them, and it was just, like, you're operating under, we have Geneva, NATO has their own rules or whatever.
Okay.
And so people like don't realize, like, that's why we took so many casualties. If we were just willing to do the things they were willing to do, it would be way less casualties. And I think that like whenever I talk about it, like if there's good guys and bad guys, it's like obviously everybody's bad in war, but there is levels to, you know, like what they're willing to do versus what we're willing to do.
It's not like we didn't have the capability.
Yeah,
we did. We had what they didn't have, which is restraint.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I like, especially now that the Taliban's taken over. I think about that. Like I think because you know, Malala.
He's experienced that with that. His business was based out. He was helping putting kids through, females through college, little girls through schooling, and all in Afghanistan with the combat flip flops, and then just shut down instantly.
Yeah, it's so sad. I remember I talked to a prosecutor a couple weeks ago, the Harris County DA, a DA for Houston, and she ran a foundation where she took female legal experts and trained them as an American prosecutor about the law systems. So training them to be prosecutors in Afghanistan, women specifically. She's a female DA. And she was so sad because when the Taliban took over, like she was able to get one person out, one of her female prosecutors that she trained up. But it's like people have no idea that they ripped them out of Congress. They were elected congressional members, you know, ripped them out. And then much less, you know, like 2 months ago, they ripped them out of being able to leave home without a man. And so just an idea, like it made me so sad. That's why I still talk positively about, like, you know, putting as much hurt on them as possible, because people don't know what rights they took away from women. And specifically like that DA, hearing her talk about it and getting female academics out, because, you know, before they said they weren't going to take them out of Congress or whatever, but then they did. Then they took them out of being able to leave their houses without a male escort. So
the West has this natural inclination to assume that every culture across the planet is just like us.
Yeah,
they're just like us, but slightly different. And they really don't have any idea just how wide that gap can be.
Ooh, Eli! I'm a ghost.
What are you doing?
I'm here to tell you about GHOSTBED.
Is this an ad?
It might be an ad.
Why are you in my bedroom?
I don't know, scoot over, let's talk about it. Every Ghost mattress has a 20-year warranty. Some even have a 25-year warranty. And you can try them out for 101 nights, worry-free. If you don't like it, just send it back.
I don't like this.
No hard feelings. One of our favorite things about GHOSTBED is that it has cooling technology. So if you get hot at night, like we do down here in Texas, it's a lifesaver.
I'm uncomfortable.
But you're not hot, are you?
I'm uncomfortable.
But you're not hot, are you? GHOSTBED also offers bundles, so they have everything you need. Just choose one of their 4 mattresses and pick your bundle.
Why are you doing this to me?
4 mattresses!
4?
Right now, GHOSTBED is offering 50% off all their products. Just use code UNSUBSCRIBE at checkout or go to ghostbed.com/unsubscribe.
Please buy some ghostbed.com/unsubscribe.
I'll be under your bed if you need me.
It's that idea of not understanding what evil is. You have like, someone like cut in line. That's their...
To them, that's not even evil, though. It's normal. Like, they don't have any other concept.
Yeah, they're like, oh, well, this. But they can't conceptualize the idea of just like, people over there will just kill you to kill you. And then it's just part of everyday life. Like, the idea of human life having value. We understand that. There are places that is not a thing. They don't care. It's like you have Brazil or some South American countries where it's like kill you just to steal an iPhone.
It's like a less educated GTA server.
Yes.
yeah, it is. It is a little bit like that. I mean, it sucks, but like I feel like I'll tell people like America's got a lot of issues, but one of the biggest things we have is like in theory the rule of law. And that those laws tend to be way more liberal than other places.
Yeah, I love it here. I ain't switching. This is my. So you got blown up. You had how high was?
I'm a transhumeral amputee, so I'm above the elbow. I have a really
what was that?
Transhumeral, so
okay.
like right at the delt. So one of the reasons that I think that I became such a big prosthetic advocate is because there's less than 400 combat wounded upper extremity amputations from Iraq and Afghanistan total. So
that's crazy.
People don't realize because it's just too high of an injury.
Yeah.
So people don't typically survive higher because anytime you get closer to the upper body, you get closer to the heart, arteries, and the neck.
That's harder shit to survive.
Yeah,
typically.
yeah. So anytime you get closer to the neck and heart, it's a lower survival rate. And then even in modern wars in like the Ukraine, they have a lot more amputees because they're at war. In their country, they have hospitals and ambulances that can drive to and from there. They still have an issue with surviving high blasts and gunshots and stuff like that. But so I was above the elbow. And I think that's why I became such a big prosthetic advocate, because a lot of people are below the elbow. There's hundreds of below the elbow, and a lot of them will use their elbow to do things. So you'll see them, like a lot of people bring up Leroy Petrie. He's missing his arm. He's missing his hand, and so they won't rely on their prosthetics so much because they'll use their elbow to do things. And so because I have such a high amputation, I have a useless limb because it's so short and it's so painful to do things with. So without a prosthetic, I'm kind of like very disabled.
Do you still find yourself like your natural inclination being to try to use the limb, like for
phantom limb?
Yeah, the phantom limb, or for however high it is, like to try. Like you naturally want to do that, or is it just a non-starter?
I do. I don't. It's hard to tell if I've trained or not because since I was born with two arms, I do think about. This arm has so many injuries. I have a nerve injury on this side, and I broke my wrist, and I'm missing the outside two ligaments. So I do.
Oh, really? Oh shit.
Force myself to, because a lot of people specific questions that I'll get is like why I do things a certain way with weightlifting and shooting, and it's because I was like. They think I'm like, why don't I just overuse this arm more? But I have to explain, like, you feel bad, like, explain all your injuries. And I'm like, actually, I'm missing out these two outside ligaments. So stabilizing things like shooting is not something that I can do. I can't out-train that. I'm just missing the ligaments. And so this, I forced myself to use, in part because the Marine Corps spent a lot of money on my recovery. So the other arm that I brought has this thing called targeted muscle reinnervation. And so they grafted my ulnar and medial nerves, which are the nerves that control your hand open and close, to my bicep and tricep heads. So with that hand, I think hand open and close to open and close it. Yeah, so that made it so
fucking wild to me.
I thought that surgery was more widely done until I got more into the prosthetic field and traveling, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's still a very rare surgery. At the time, it was experimental. But so I think hand open and close, and it open and closes the hand. So it does make it so it does feel like prosthetics aren't caught up to the level of advancedness of that surgery. It was kind of like in their reasoning was to future-proof me for prosthetics, and so
why do you think that is? Why do you think that it hasn't caught up yet?
Well, it's an expensive surgery. It's an expensive surgery. I remember whenever I got it, all of these surgeons asked to be able to watch that surgery specifically so they could teach it. And I think that one thing is survival, and then hospitals. So less than 7% of amputees are upper extremity, and so that would be specific to the trauma of losing an arm. So most amputees are leg amputees. So that's like one of the reasons why people are like, why does his arm look so different? There's just so many more leg amputees that you're like, so many guys that are missing their legs.
A lot of people.
And it's like, I get this a lot. It's like, why is your arm metal? And I was like, well, you don't ask that to leg people because all legs are metal. Because they're all to that level where they can be used in the Paralympics. And they're all tough. And so it's just that legs are more finished products. So it's just... that surgery is so niche that it's like, I remember talking about it in the Ukraine, and they have, 10 times more amputees than we have from Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's just because they have higher survivability because they learned from us the tourniquet thing that happened halfway through the war.
That and they're more on like level pure warfare.
Yeah, they have, quick access to hospitals. They're literally, ambulatory as in driving them to the, I was like,
just the casualty count though per day is wild for that war. Like, I don't think people realize like just how big of a deal that was. Like, people kind of knew in the beginning, but then they forgot. But like the amount of casualties in the Ukraine-Russian war is I mean, it's crazy high compared to even the GWAT.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. A lot of people don't know that, and I didn't know that until I didn't know that, so I didn't know that until I got there. I went there specifically with the Protest Foundation to talk about this arm because they wanted to be able to use it to fucking fight the Russians. And I thought it was like, I kind of like a sitting joke was like, because everybody calls me the Winter Soldier. And I was like, the Mexican Winter Soldier. And I was like, let me go to the Ukraine just to fucking rub it in Putin's face. With the metal arm.
Beaches.
Yeah. But I talking about that. Yeah. I was like, they have thousands of arm amputees, which is why
That's cool.
I went there and I'm like, there's so much technology that's going to come out of that war. I mean, there already is.
Yeah.
But
To a scary degree.
The companies that are coming out of there, there's a couple advanced prosthetic companies that I got to visit there. One of them's Esper. I'll always talk about them because they make a metal hand, and they're barely getting available in the U.S. But yeah, they have so many more amputees that I think that a lot of the prosthetic technology advancements will come out of there. Unfortunately, if Americans don't do it, just because it's a lot of
necessity.
Yeah, just necessity. It's just necessity. Yeah.
This is wild. Getting that. Oh, Cody, you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. I was
No, I'm enthralled by all
Dude,
of
that's
this.
what
I'm just listening.
it's wild. So with yours, you, as you're saying, upper limbs are a lot rarer to survive or during the GWAT, and you got, I assume, super lucky for the blast to close the wound, and then they tourniqueted it right after.
Well, no, I began to put my own tourniquet on.
on,
Dude, it was
man.
terrible. You know what's so funny? It was
It's that training.
Yeah.
You're like, that sun's in my fucking eyes.
My boys later on were like, my saw gunner was like, he was like, "It's insane because like you crawled out of this canal and you're just bleeding out," and he started yelling at us to get on the line and lay down, cover fire. And I was like thinking to myself like, that's stuff that I don't remember.
Muscle memory.
Dude, I weigh like 200 pounds now. I think I weighed like 189 at the time. And when they measured me, I weighed 165. I lost so much blood. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I must have, like, I felt so weak and so cold that I was like, you don't remember till years later, like things. And you piece together what happened from different people. And he was like, yeah, man, you were yelling at us. They're like you're missing your arm. And you think you're still going to be in charge of us. And I remember like in a award coming up later in the Marine Corps about that, and I was like, that's so badass. I don't even remember that, but I do think I would be yelling at you guys like, get on the line. Like,
You do push-ups
because you
like,
still
what
think
the
you're
fuck, sorry.
Well, they got
Smoking. You're like in and out of consciousness. You're still a dickhead, dude.
Yeah, it was like, I can't believe you were yelling at us. Like, and I was like, we thought you were gonna. They're like emotional, crying, and I like thinking they're thinking I'm gonna die, and I'm like yelling at them. So it's like an emotional.
That's wild.
Yeah, an emotional thing that it's funny like thinking about that. Dude, who was I with? I was with the guy the other day who was a singing veteran who's a Marine who's like trying to get into Hollywood. He's in film school right now, but he does like cinematography and stuff like that out in California. And we were talking about like all these crazy little things, little moments like that. But I was thinking about him because like now I was like, okay, they thought I was gonna die. That's why they were treating me that way. They were like, what are you doing? Giving us orders still. But I remember like I was like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna get to tell this story, but since I was a team leader, I had 2 or 3s on my leg, and I'm lucky that they didn't blow up because people say that they need like 12.7 whatever rotations not to blow up, but
that's
did
only
lose people.
That's only to arm.
Yeah, to arm.
That's still a motherfucking explosive.
Yeah, there's still gunpowder in there.
You're like more knowledgeable in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So because I've heard that, but we did lose Marines to team leaders to them blowing up
Because you just
they were
need
able
an
to get through it.
explosive that is violent enough to set off the explosive that's inside it. Because that really, it can daisy chain.
Yeah, so we did lose people from that.
Yeah.
And because people said at first like that wasn't a risk, but then we lost people from them getting hit, unfortunately, and them going off because the ID was big enough for that. But on all my 2 or 3 rounds, I had a different Ninja Turtle on every one of them. And whenever I got injured, I had Leo in the chamber. And it's my son. Like, dude, I was like, I remember like another team leader came up, Baxter. He came up to me and I was bleeding out, and I was like, "You're trying to treat for shock." So I was like thinking like, how can I calm him down? Like, because he's thinking I'm gonna die. If I'm gonna die, I don't want him to.
Oh, you're actually calming him down.
Yeah,
instead
because
of-
like,
You're
everybody think when you're a team leader, everybody thinks you're invincible.
Yeah.
And So I remember telling him like, hey man, like you just got to kill somebody with Leo, because I got Leo in the chamber. And he's like, okay, Matt. I was like, I love you. And he was like, I'll kill somebody with Leo. And I just remember like later on asking him about that, and he was like mentally disturbed by that question, because it was a very rough. He was like, yeah, I did. And
It's the darkest day of his life. He's like, what do I do? And you're like, kill somebody with Leo. He's like, I think he has lost his mind now.
That guy has never watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to this day.
Yeah, he's like,
No, I remember thinking about that, like whenever they got back, you know, and he was like bringing that up, and he was like, so it was such a horrible deployment for them that I was just thinking like, just to, you know, try to take them out of the fucking darkness. But
I love it. That's how we survive a lot of the times. I mean, depending on your job, your occupation. But we always talk about gallows humor, and that's even in the midst of it. It happens. Like you're in full combat, your arms blown off, and you're still yelling at your dudes.
Yeah,
You're telling them to use Leonardo to kill somebody. It's just the perfect example of how we.
Bro, don't put the tourniquet on my neck. Stop.
yeah, dude, that had that happen. One of my
Are you fucking serious?
So Jordan, he got shot so high up with an AK, and you know they roll after a certain amount. So eventually he had to lose his leg from the round. But because people was like, "Well, you're an IED." It's like, no, he got shot in the leg. But I remember that he got one of his balls in the tourniquet. Got shot
I've heard of that.
so high up, and it's just like you have to go as high as possible.
Yeah.
When it's above the thigh, when it's above the knee, you know what I mean. You really, because it's like they're gonna bleed out.
Yeah.
And
fast.
so
I mean, that's what you're told to do.
yeah, you have to do it, and it's something that it's just like, fuck, it sucks to be in that situation. But like now it's a joke. At the time, it wasn't a joke.
No, it's
You know
nuts.
what I
Just
mean?
fuck. That's like you're rushing and you're trying to protect your body. You're like, sorry,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah, that's so
You're like
weird.
sliding that ball out of the way.
Yeah.
You're like, you'll thank me later.
Dude, yeah, there's some dark. Every time I hear like a different story about that, I'm like, oh man, like that's good, because like there is good versions of that, and there's bad versions of that, like, where like people are able to still use humor, and then there's like the opposite, where people like panicked and people died, and like because people will die from the shock.
Yeah.
So it is that humor does save lives, because like I've run into guys where like they're screaming when somebody gets hit, and then like somebody's missing their legs, and then they're you're gonna literally put them into shock. You know what I mean? Because you're supposed to be calm, and like we've had people scream. But I remember the other day, like I was doing this thing in Maine. When you guys hit me up, I was like at some cabin writing a country song, and this guy was telling me about one of his guys had that situation happen, and he lost one ball, and one of the guys ran up and was like talking about like, oh, he lost the ball, and you're like, dude, like, and this guy is a nurse now. I was just like, man, what a piece of shit that he would like tell him that while he's still getting CASVAC, that like, because that's the first thing guys still look for is like,
Yeah, you
am I
don't tell
okay?
him.
Yeah, is my dick there?
Yeah, and then so that he did have that injury, and the guy was like, and so the other guy, eventually became a nurse. He was with the 101st.
Oh, okay.
And he was in the clear in Iraq, and talking about how like this guy came up and was like screaming and panicking, like, oh man, your balls, and it's like. And so the guy lied. Was like, "No, you're good. You're gonna be good, bro. Like you're all intact and stuff like that."
You have to lie.
You're
You're like, man, you look great. You're doing great. Hey, just stay with me. Hey, let's keep you awake. You're doing
You
good.
have
You're
to.
fine. You're fine, dude. You cannot show any emotion in that situation, because you want to keep them as calm as possible to keep blood flow down.
Which is kind of funny,
Yeah.
because I like anytime when you have like if I was to get fucked up tomorrow on range day, let's just say, I've heard people say this before, where like this has happened to them, where like if Cody's around me or Eli's around me, they're like, you're good, bro. You're good. Like, everything's going to be fine. You're good. Just like, let's get the fucking truck here now. Like, you're fine, man. You're fine. If you guys started telling me I'm fine, I'm terrified.
Like, Brandon, you dumb. God, you're so stupid. Just hold on. Cody, he is fucked.
Yeah. If you guys started telling me how good I was doing, I'm losing it, dude.
I love you. Oh no! Starts freaking out.
Gentle forehead kiss. I love you, buddy.
Cody brings out a cross. Where did that come from?
Oh, no.
It's funny with the dark humor element of that too, because I've had people that like will make they'll be irritated with the jokes that we make on the podcast, and it's like, you've never met a veteran, have you?
Yeah,
Like, you don't.
Do people have dark Like,
Yeah, I think that the darknet, like, because that changed so much, obviously, because of the military, and now like I feel like I relate more to people who are like into anime and stuff like that, because you don't have that light, because like I think about like all my idols, it's very hard to like relate to people, because you're like, man, like if I would have been in that place, I would have died. You know what I mean? Like we were talking about Marcus Aurelius and like some of his quotes, and I changed some of his quotes thinking about it. I was like, because even in Vietnam, I would have died. And so like you look at anime characters and you're like, oh man, like these are these people that maybe they weren't real, but they created this violent story that's easier to relate to.
Oh, you're good.
And
Just moving.
sometimes it's easier to communicate in those kind of terms, because it's like and if I was a Spartan, I would have fucking died. So I'm lucky to be alive in 2024 because the advancements of medical technology and stuff like that, because
those chances of your DNA literally making up to that moment. They've got all your family members up to that probably did war or something, and then you're the one that survives. Yes, you get blown up, but you're like, okay, at that moment with technology.
Yeah,
But your DNA's made it millions of years to be able to get to the point where you could survive.
Yeah, dude, and like now, like as a dad, I think about it like holistically like that, where I'm like, or macro, because my dad was Army Special Forces, and he was in Panama, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and
Damn.
Yeah. So he served with 1st, 7th, and 3rd Group, and he actually served with Master Sergeant Benavides. And it's fucking just the Tejano warrior. But I was like, he was more beast. He was way more decorated than me. And I think about like how tough I was, that I'm like a little bit religiously. I think about it like God took care of me, and that I was able to survive that, because me and my boys have even talked about it. Like, I don't know if anybody else would have been able to survive that, because I saved myself. Everybody was like, who saved you or whatever. I was like, I crawled out of the canal myself. I lost so much blood. They didn't know I was wounded because I was in the front. And unfortunately, the person, my squad leader, passed away because they didn't recognize that he was hurt. We were both in the front. And so I think about how tough my dad was, getting through all these fucking wars unscathed, and all the training that he spent years. He spent 20 years in the Army. And for me to be able to get to where I am, I'm like, okay, so some of that is just grit from my fucking family having hard lives for years.
When Cody started his crazy business of podcasting, you know what he didn't think about? Merchandise. But now he's selling what?
Merch. And it couldn't be easier.
All because of Shopify.
If you've shopped on bunkerbranding.com, you've used Shopify.
Shopify is a global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business.
From the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders! ! Shopify's there to help you grow.
From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS, that means point of sale, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered.
Once you start selling, Shopify makes getting paid simple by instantly accepting every type of payment.
Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers using the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to other leading commerce platforms.
And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic.
Your AI-powered all-star.
Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen.
My favorite companies.
What is that?
No clue, but they also power millions of other entrepreneurs across 175 countries.
Because businesses that grow with Shopify.
Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/unsubpod. All lowercase.
Go to shopify.com/unsubpod now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in.
Go to shopify.com/unsubpod.
It paid off, and now you're adjusting to it. It probably took years to get to that adjustment period, because depending, everyone handles trauma differently. I know all of us have our own demons and how we handle that, and it's PTSD either from military, from policing, like it just how you learn to cope with stuff. I got lucky. How I cope with it is I don't have as much emotional response to things, but then I watch my buddies that did the exact same deployment, and I see how that affected them. I'm like, holy shit. But you've like And Cody, like with the police stuff you've done.
No, we like I talk about like now after you're like, man, there's so many more combat veterans from being cops than there is from combat. And so like I didn't know that until, you know, like working with some organizations and then family, like, you know, one of my cousins, one of my primos in Houston, you know, he's a SWAT. Yeah, and now he's not SWAT. Thank God he got out of it. But he was SWAT, and his first call was he was a sniper. His first call was responding to Santa Fe, and my little sister was at that school too. And his very first call was my sister was like a sister to him because they lived together because we're really poor, and so he's my cousin, and his first call was responding to her mass shooting. Oh, and it was just like, you know, I don't know if you remember Santa Fe, but it was like 10 shooters. And that was his very first call as a SWAT officer. And like, that's insane amount of trauma to be able to deal with that. As your first call, your sister's school is, you know, locked
Did he
down.
stick with it after that?
Yeah, he stuck with it for like, you know, I think like 7 more years. Eventually he got out. He just had a daughter, and he's like, unfortunately, I think that it's like most of you guys, like SWAT tends to be too. Same thing with the military. There's just it's too hard physically. It's just too hard physically, I think. And the smartest people don't want to stay in. They want to get out and be successful on the civilian side. So it's just like he stayed with it after that. But there was I think that we're lucky because a lot of those people don't want to stay in because physically, if you take it seriously, it's very hard. It's harder than the majority of the military because the training physically side is like being in the infantry.
And mentally, this is not the thing that like we talk about, like or when we get together, the last thing we talk about is, you know, fucking trauma or anything like that. But something I've always heard is when you're talking about policing or SWAT or whatnot, the thing that fucks you up the most is that you're thrown into high adrenaline situations, high stress environments that are highly traumatic to most people, but it's not in the context of you are 5,000 miles from home. You are in your county you live in.
So you lose that safety net. Cody can probably talk more on that. I know it's that unknown, the hypervigilance, and then walking up to each car and you don't know. It's the unknown versus like when we were there, it's bad guys. We're like,
it's easy because it's like a vacation. It's like a vacation. You're like, I'm gonna go fight the bad guys versus like, because dealing with people. All my family in Texas, another one's a police officer in Houston, talking about it, where it's like that's your neighborhood. It's like it's like
you get home from a deployment and you're 3 blocks away from where the thing happened.
Yeah,
that was your biggest thing with it, like policing. What was like that? What was the hardest part about that transition going from like, hey, this like the bad shit to right back home with your kiddo?
Well, I mean, you know, you would go out and you would catch some fucking child or someone who committed a murder. And then, you know, I'd go downtown with John to a restaurant and I'd see that same motherfucker in the restaurant.
After Bell, I didn't even think
like
about
I'm with
that.
my, you know, I'm with my kids and my girlfriend. And like, oh, that dude's just sitting over there. That guy that I arrested for last week, or that guy that I arrested for attempted murder, some DA let him out on the streets, and they're standing there looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and I have John beside me. It's like, yeah, it's home.
That's the craziest part about it too, is just thinking that like, oh, this is not just like thinking how many people haven't been caught for this, how many people have been caught and just made bail and are just out walking amongst you.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, I think that's why the attrition is so high for cops, and especially SWAT is really physical. So it's like you see it when they want to get out of it because it's like you're just getting the worst calls, and it's just fucking terrible.
What was like? I'll go down the line. Actually, it's like, what was your biggest thing that helped you the most in breaking that? This is by the way, we're going to talk about this before. This is like an entire month of veteran. We wanted to make November big on Veteran Month. Just like, hey, we're going to do good. We're raising money for nonprofits, like kicking ass and giving back to the communities that give us so much, and all you all thankfully have done so much for it. So we're just that's part of this month. It's hearing these amazing stories, and then also hopefully helping others. It's like, man, I didn't have a way to cope, but hearing from Cody on how he coped, or hearing from Sebastian on how he goes, that helped me push through. Because at the end of the day, we care about all y'all more than you will ever fucking know. Like, we are blessed to be in the positions we are and to be put on that level, which we're terrified from because we don't want to fail y'all. But we try our hardest to give back, especially during like months like this. It's like, hey, fucking, we thank you, and then you get to hear our stories, and hopefully we can help some of you.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I hear most about Unsub, which I think is awesome, because there's a lot of people that, like, you know, they come home and then they feel they try to reintegrate back in society, and nobody understands their sense of humor. Nobody understands what they've been through. Nobody even attempts to get where they're coming from. And then they just feel isolated, which, like, I think that's rad that Unsubscribe has kind of filled a hole in that world where it's like, hey, this is like hanging out with the boys again.
We're good at filling holes.
I'd say we're okay at filling holes.
We're okay at filling holes.
Damn Skippy.
What was some of your, like, hey, what was that big thing that helped you the most during, like, when you were transitioning out of being a police officer? You're like, okay, this is too much. You still have your PTSD, but what was that shift for you? That's like, oh, this helps me at least calm my nerves or anything.
Bro, video games. Come on.
Oh,
Video
yeah, never
games.
mind. Yeah, you're like, that's your decompression, which is
Yeah, it's all. It's. I think it's like most of our decompression.
Is
That like gallows humor is the start to that, and then finding video games that have gallows humor in them, which, you know, Hollywood making video games these days is gay as shit. But, like, you know, like, video games always is like such a great transition to, like, I don't know, to find a good headspace and get away from the world for a moment.
Yeah.
Like, you know, come home after seeing, like, baby on the highway, you know, like catapulted out the window and spaghettied all over the road. Come home, you know, just play some Minecraft.
I just see you, like, coming home from a very traumatic day, fucking Spartanburg PD. You're just like, huh, if I kill the hooker in GTA afterward, I get my money back.
Just going home or walking up to a scene, and you have Minecraft music playing in your head. Dun, 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 dun. Like, I'll make the best of this.
John's like, Dad, what happened today? Nothing. Do you want to play Minecraft?
Dude, that's a rough one. What about?
No, you made me like specifically wanted to mention an organization, Creative Vets. The people I wrote that we wrote a song dedicated to my unit, Dark Horse.
This was Creative Vets?
Yeah, Creative Vets. They actually they're huge fans of you. I remember when I told them that I was going on this podcast, they were so excited because they've written a lot of famous country music songs. My people, John and Heidi. Like, you know, for Lee Bryce, Craig Wood, like Lonely Eyes is one of the songs they wrote, but they help. And it was funny because, like, you'll get this. I got hit up by them through a Wounded Warrior Project, hit me up on the DMs, and I remember just seeing the thing. And I'm having so many issues get prosthetics from the VA that I just told them to fuck off. They were like, for me to help, you want to come write a country music song with somebody? And I was like, I just think, like, this is like $1 billion organization. I probably be helping people get prosthetics and stuff like that, because that's what people think they do. And I remember I was like, nah, fuck you guys. Like, I don't want to give y'all any credence to what you do or whatever. And then this guy comes up to me in Nashville, and he's a Marine veteran, a Purple Heart recipient in Nashville, and asks me about helping write a song to tell my story. And my song was Dark Horse, but it was about my unit, just named about my unit, but it was about, you know, my son, my dad's journey, because, like, I think my dad had demons he had way more combat than me. And like that, I really love the idea of, like, Creative Vets. So they take veterans, Vietnam veterans, and parts first responders, and they get them with people to tell their stories. And I thought that was so cool because, like, typically, you know, in that space, it's like if somebody's asking to do something, especially with veterans or first responders, it's like a fucking ruck or like a Spartan race, something like that. And that's good physically to an extent, but, like, a lot of those people are getting out of the military or whatever, you know, because so much wear and tear on their body. So it's like they're not thrilled about.
I know. Welcome. Okay, we're gonna pop fireworks next to your head for 20 hours.
Yeah, it's
like,
yeah.
I've heard some of those complaints where it's like it's from friends of mine and things like that, where they're like, "Oh yeah, my whoever's in charge of me has decided to do a veterans awareness run, where we're now forced to go run 3 miles in the morning to prevent veterans." It's like you could have just let me sleep in.
Dude, and that's what I mean. Like, it's for real, because because it's like, I don't want it. It's like, like, what? How does that? And to me, that was really cool. Like, they did have an arts program where they teach people art, and they teach them how to write songs, and in theater, like screenplays and stuff like that. And I was like, that's so unique versus it takes you to a mental space. Mm-hmm. I think that getting into the mental space is so much different than I think a lot of people do respond to like the physical stuff. Like my cousin that was SWAT. He still does. He's big into CrossFit and stuff like that. But I think that's just because he's so young and he's still in like the mentality of the fear of having to protect his family. And I have that too. You know what I mean? I do train a lot, mostly probably because I'm disabled. But I think that I thought it was really cool. Creative Vets, founded by a Marine Purple Heart recipient, Fallujah veteran. And I was like, and he looked like you, just a really good looking guy, big, strong. And I was like, oh man, like,
go on,
because it has
trying to take Eli home, dude.
Just unsuspecting, you wouldn't know this guy's, you wouldn't. He's not. To me, I have the benefit of having a fucking metal arm. I said that in a speech to somebody, and somebody responded to that, where I was like, there's a lot of veterans that don't have a metal arm, look like the Winter Soldier. So like, people see my trauma, and that works against me a lot, like, because that means that people are weirdos with me, and they always try to take me to like the worst day of my life. But like, guys like that are just going through the struggles and not having that thing that tells people what they went through or whatever. So I thought it was really cool that he created that space where partners people with country music. Especially I'm from Texas, I was born in San Antonio, and I thought it was so cool that I was like, man, I danced to these songs so many fucking times, and for these people to come out, and it was in Maine, and that's why I was like, whenever y'all hit me up, I was there, and in the middle of nowhere writing this song, and I thought it was so cool, a unique take on getting veteran stories, and they're big into Vietnam veterans, which is so cool to me, because my dad, didn't get to tell a story because he was like. He's just super quiet. Didn't even. I wouldn't know until I was in the Marine Corps. I didn't know how decorated he was until I was like, oh shit,
you seen that stack?
You did all that, shit. And I'm like, oh man, I feel like such an idiot now.
You have 3. You're like, Dad, look at me.
Yeah. I'm like, I had no idea.
You completed the tutorial.
Yeah. So you're like, I think that's really cool out there, like, because a lot of civilians forget about that war, and he was drafted, and so it's just I thought it was cool that one of their focus was.
That's what's crazy. Like, that idea of getting drafted. That's voluntold. You're in the military, and then going special forces afterwards. A lot of the guys, I mean, you were like, probably, I was like, a Marine. I want to shoot shit. Like, all of us had that image of what we wanted to do in war. That is a time when it was like, hey, bud.
Yep.
You're doing this. Like, you have no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then to be like, I'm going to join the Green Berets. I'm going to make team. Wild.
Yeah, it's talking to some of the guys that served with them later on. I was like, oh, like a lot of it had to do with Panama and the groups wanting to recruit people who spoke Spanish, because I'm from the Valley. I'm from like 5 minutes from the border, and he's from the Valley, so he spoke Spanish, and he looked like he was from the fucking jungle. And so I just learning from that, I was like, oh, like 7th group had a big Mexican influence just because of the wars in Latin America, and I didn't know that until later on. People teaching me that, because he was an instructor at the JFK Special Warfare School for a little bit.
No shit.
And like a lot of those people don't know that history is not taught. Like it's only taught in that school specifically, and so if you don't have access to that, you don't get really. It's not taught in American history, which sucks, because even if it's a little bit dark, I do think that it would be cool for people to learn about all those kind of like jungle wars and all that kind of shit. But yeah, so it's like when I tell people that, like, I was like, yeah, man, it's crazy how much more obviously like trained he was than me and stuff like that. But so many of those guys got pulled there, you know what I mean? And in the Army, because the Marine Corps wasn't really drafting people the same way that the Army was. And then a lot of them stayed in, and they're just like, oh fuck, I love to fight. You know what I mean? They're like, jungle, like this is like where I grew up, So it's I love hearing those cool stories of like where people came from specifically for those Latin American wars, because it was like something that was like I like thinking about it now, having traveled abroad, where I'm like, oh, America's got this like really cool, diverse military, where you go somewhere other places and it's like they all look like one thing, and I'm like, this is why we're so much better than everybody else, because we have people that can do well. I fucking did well in the desert. I'm from the Valley. There's nowhere hotter in the world than there is in South Texas. Like everywhere, like, how do you do so well in fucking Afghan, the jungle and all? I'm like, oh man, where I'm from, it's like way hotter than this.
Meanwhile, you got a guy from Arizona, Florida, Alaska, Maine, Nevada,
crazy.
like
Just
everybody
the
in one group. It's like, all right,
you
die.
got these mountain men, you get these Vikings, and you got these people that, you know, like, it's just it's crazy thinking about it now that I think it's
One
so
or two
cool.
Florida guys, you know?
Yeah, some swamp motherfuckers.
And it's forced together and to work together, which is wild too. You don't have much options on your teammates. They're your teammates for better or worse, and they're going to be deploying with you. God damn.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Did you notice he's wearing a Berserk shirt? I just
Oh, dude, I
noticed
wrote
that.
this for him because, like, last time I met him, well, you know what?
The time that Eli didn't remember, go on.
Well, I had a blue arm.
Yeah, that's what I don't see skin color. I see arm color.
That's not better, Eli.
Well, you mentioned that you're such a huge fan, and I was like, now I know, like, because of like TikTok and YouTube, like I know all of the animes that people have robotic arms on, and for a long time I didn't like Berserk because it was too dark. But then, like, going through shit worse and worse, and I was like, man, like, it's hard for me to relate to like unfortunately happier animes. And you're like, man, like, because, you know, like, my situation wouldn't have, like, fighting the VA has been such a big part of my life, and then getting prosthetics, and like, this wouldn't have happened if I wasn't doing like crazy shit, breaking all these prosthetics, and then, like, you know, just getting into a situation. And now I feel like I relate even more to like the darker animes.
Did you just say that fighting the VA made Berserk tolerable by
Yeah, man, it's hard.
comparison?
Like, because
They're the apostles. That's right. The VA is the apostles. They fucking suck. They're evil. And our
Look.
boy Guts.
You're like, wow, I thought that
Slaying
this
them
was
bitches.
super dark, and then I started dealing with the VA and realized it's really not so bad.
No, man, I feel bad. Like, I feel bad telling my story sometimes as an American. 'Cause
Don't.
I've told it so many times abroad, and you're like, because working for prosthetic companies in Germany, and like you working with like all of these Brits and Spaniards and the Ukrainians and Germans, and you're like, you talk about how hard it is to get prosthetics from the VA system, and they're like, that's crazy. Like, we have this conception of how people are treated, and I'm like, yeah. Like, sometimes I feel embarrassed to talk about it, but then, you know, like I think if I didn't talk about it, like
Trying a big spotlight on that shit. Like, we all, like, everyone. That's why, like, Brandon, one of the biggest things when he was having his Congress run, it was about the VA. Like, you were like, dude, why the fuck is this so jacked up? All alone? Now time to trim the old pubes.
Hey there, beach babe. Are you ready to soak up those summer vibes and get the perfect beach bod?
I don't have pants on.
Yeah, I noticed. Well, you're in luck, because our friends over at manscaped.com have you covered from head to toe. With the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, they'll have you looking and feeling good this summer. Trust Manscaped to unlock the confidence you need to turn heads this summer season. Join the 10 million men who already trust Manscaped and use discount code UNSUB at checkout to get 20% off your order plus free shipping. Let's make this summer your smoothest one yet.
Save me. Keep your ear and nose as tidy as your hedges. With the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose head trimmer, you'll be looking classy as ever.
The updated Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra groin and body hair trimmer got a summer makeover. It's waterproof now for all those times you need to shave your groin or body hair at a pool party.
So get 20% off plus free shipping using code UNSUB at manscaped.com. The summer sun is here to stay, so trust Manscaped to keep those pubes at bay.
I didn't know, especially having a veteran congressman in this district, I didn't realize how neglected veterans were in you know, West Texas. It's embarrassing.
It makes me. It's embarrassing, and then Texas, because you're as a Texan, you know, it's really weird because you're like, I have so much support in Texas, just not from the people that are paid to do it.
Yeah.
And like when I told people, like, I spent years in between, like that I have a leather harness that I made, and I spent years in between getting appointments for the prosthetics, and I never felt so scared until I became a dad that I was like, I really need prosthetics, because like being able to change diapers, bathe my son, I never had that fear of being disabled until I became a dad, where I was like, man, like I really have to figure this out, because you know, my son doesn't really care he doesn't know I'm disabled. He doesn't know that I can't do certain things. He's 2, and he can already do things better than me, especially when I don't wear my prosthetic. And so it comes from like being a Texan is weird because like this arm was made because one Texan who's like, I call him Tony Stark because he's a fucking millionaire, George Schroeder. He's famous in San Antonio. If you've been outside to like Randolph and Lackland or downtown San Antonio, he made all of the metal structures. Or Houston, he made metal structures for Synergy. Obviously, he's done work for SpaceX.
Wild.
But yeah,
He wants to ever be on.
Yeah, dude. I like he's not even in Texas right now. Like dude, this guy. I'll tell the story. Right before I went to the Ukraine, I broke this arm boxing, and to lay into the veteran thing, I had a.
Wait, hold the fuck on. Just don't grease over boxing. Who you
Me and
punching
you
with
both
that
looked
thing?
up like, hold on, what?
Dude, as guys.
A car?
Don't worry, it's a 10-ounce glove. It's still metal behind it.
Dude, as a guy, I think people like why I train so much. I was like, where I grew up, like I got, and this is something that I take with me now that I'm like, oh, it's kind of a weird thing. I grew up in the valley, and so to non-Texans, it's like 5 minutes from the border, and like I got jumped so many times that like people think I have PTSD from the Marine Corps, and I was like, no, that comes from growing up in the valley, where I have this thing where I can't let people behind me. And just always having awareness, situational awareness, is because I got jumped so many times, and so that played really well into the Marine Corps. And like people didn't know that about me in the Marine Corps, but I was just like where I got that from. And so always having that mentality to train, especially being disabled. I never felt so disabled until I got into a couple situations where I was like, man, like people could like if they wanted to, especially without a prosthetic, really hurt me, like just holding my arm. And so after getting injured, I always wanted to train with whatever prosthetics that I had. And so, but I do box with this arm. And, that's why one of the reasons it's so popular is because nobody has prosthetics that you can fucking box with, shoot with, or whatever. Arms. Because they're so fragile, typically. But I did break this one part that he didn't make. So it was a sense of pride of him that I broke it. 3 days before I went to the Ukraine, because he made this part. He came in, and I love telling this story. I told him last week because he made this other part right here, right before he left to fucking I think Minnesota or Michigan or something. But
what's that part do?
There's a steel roller right here, and it's where the cable rolls. But he hand lathed that. I remember one of his workers was like, "Did you just CNC that shit?" And he's like, "No, I actually just hand lathed that." And I was like, that's his dedication. Where I was like, because he has all these people that work for him now, and a lot of
building
metal
it for you.
Yeah,
That's
I would love to talk to this guy.
Yeah, George Schroeder. He's because you're from Texas. Like I got to talk about it at the Grand Ole Opry. You know what the Grand Ole Opry is? It's like a country music place in Nashville.
Yeah,
and
the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville.
Yeah,
I think next year we're
playing.
We're doing that.
Dude, that would be. I got to talk about this on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry.
Shit.
Oh no!
And I was like talking about how bad it was. Getting unfortunately, the VA issues are why I got this because I had trouble getting prosthetics. He heard my story and was like, "I bet you I can build you something better than you've ever had before." And I did get to talk about it. So now, having traveled to talk about it, I climbed Kilimanjaro with this, and ironically. Yeah, dude, it's like
you can't just drop shit like that.
I feel like a lazy piece of shit. This is why I love individuals like you. If you make a excuse, it's like, well, I'm just tired. I get winded easy. Homeboys just dropped the bomb of I climbed Kilimanjaro.
So this part specifically, everybody asked what these things were for. This was put on there for ropes because I was like Brandon was asking about how much I use this. This arm is so injured that I get scared to overuse it because it'll wear out if I use it too much. Yep. So here's where I put the ropes. And I told him before I went to Kilimanjaro, I told him if you build me this, I'm gonna let you know right now, I'm gonna put my life on the line. No, I told him I was I'm gonna rely on it. So whatever you do, just no pressure, but I will rely on it to the point where I'll put ropes around it and trust my life with it. So I put the ropes around here, and this is steel. And so people are like, why? Because there's Fallout. And people have said that it looks like the armor from Fallout.
Oh, it looks like what's the suits? The
Power armor.
Power armor suit.
Yeah. And I was like, that was specifically for Kilimanjaro. And but it's so funny because some of the scratches I have from here are from the obsidian on Kilimanjaro, and that shit cut right through.
Oh yeah, obsidian.
It cuts right through that. But this part was specifically for mountain climbing, so I could put the ropes here, so I could pull, because I'm so strong on this side that's where I would put the ropes. And but that was like one of the first things that I did. I brought multiple prosthetics, and I broke my bionic prosthetic like the first day because it was raining, and I didn't even think about the fact that I tried to modify it to be rainproof, but the bionics, they're not remotely waterproof.
No.
And so I broke it. I had it on my pack, and I fucking and I left it there at the base camp because I broke it. And I was like, oh man, I can't believe I broke it the first day. And but I had this arm, and I didn't know it was gonna be so tough. And I finished Kilimanjaro with it, and I feel bad sometimes talking about Kilimanjaro because we did lose half of our team. Like half the team didn't make it. And
did it make it to the top or die?
Yeah, no, not.
Okay, Jesus Christ! I was like, this is a completely different story.
Dude, who the fuck are you climbing with?
No, we had a couple amputees there. We had a couple amputees. This was with the organization they help first responders, specifically like law enforcement and firefighters and military, and they'll take them on trips like that. And but whenever you do things like that, it is to each their own, like how much training you do, and obviously it wouldn't be a challenge if people weren't able to, if it wasn't difficult, people would have do it. So we had a double amputee that he didn't finish, and then we had Noah Galloway. He's a famous he was on Dance with the Stars. He didn't make it, and it sucks because it was just the prosthetic limitations. And
that's what's crazy.
He had an experimental knee. He had an experimental knee that Autobox sent to him.
Oh, he was above
the knee. Yeah,
which is crazy, and they're just now refining that shit. Like, dude, it's crazy. Like how recent bone into the the titanium. Yeah,
osseointegration.
Derek.
Yeah, dude, those are some of Derek's one of the first ones. I think Crispy, I don't know if Crispy doesn't have it, but I remember talking to these guys, and this is as of the last 5 years, they're the first ones having this integrated into their bone.
Because
like,
Derek's shit was super experimental. That was
terrible. Yeah, people ask me about that all the time, and I'm like, no, I'm too young and too active, because I know so many of it's such a small niche community that I was like, it wasn't worth the risk, because I already had so many experimental surgeries that I was like, I do have a really short amputation, so that's why they asked me, because they're like, I know you can barely use prosthetics because your amputation is so high, but I was like, I spent such a long time in the hospital that I was like, I just want to move on with my life. And I know he's had a lot of issues with it too, and it sucks, but that's the people making progress.
They're trying because there's nowhere else to test it,
dude. Like here in Texas, like I'm so proud of this and some of the stuff that I've been able to do with it. Like I went to the Ukraine to talk about it because all their soldiers were hitting me up on YouTube and TikTok about it, and because people, I remember Logan brought up to me Neuralink, and I was like, nah, like before Tesla, because Tesla started getting into the prosthetic space like 2 months ago. So before they just jumped into it, I actually moved to Austin specifically for prosthetics. I was like, man, because it sucked. I didn't know if I would have realized earlier such a part of my life was going to be about prosthetics, I would have done things differently. Because at first I was like, if I get into prosthetics, because people wanted me to get into prosthetics, I was like, I won't really have recovered, because then so much of my life will be dedicated to the injury. And then because of where legs were, I really thought that arms would be that same thing. Like plug and play. A lot of legs are so tough that people are not. Special Forces were the first people to get the best legs. Autobach made them, and I was telling Brandon before we started about the best leg was actually from a company that I worked with before. Yeah. I still have really. They hired me, and I worked for them in Berlin for an upper extremity campaign and for just consultation. And the best knee in the world is metal, and it's made by them, but it was made through DARPA as a program with DARPA. And so people are like, where did this super advanced knee come from? And it's referenced a lot because we compare this to that.
Well, the crazy part is what you told me before that, or while we were talking about it, was why they developed it.
Yeah, so there was 3 guys. You probably know them. I think one of them was Nick. He messaged me on Instagram. It was specifically for Special Forces to return to duty. And
not surprised at all. That's like,
you got your leg blown off, and they're like, "Oh, how do we get you back in?"
I mean, there's such an investment, especially in the sports.
Yeah, millions. I mean, I think it's like 1.2. How much was spent on you, Griff?
On me?
Yeah, like for your military worth, for all your training you've done.
Millions.
Yeah.
2 to 3 million.
Yeah, there's such a huge investment that it's like now that would be because
Like,
now
the bottleneck's an $80,000 leg. All right.
yeah,
Like
exactly
that sort of thing.
Yeah, because that like the arm that I have, that it's like it's funny. The arm that I have is like two to 270, 100,000, and they're so much more expensive than knees. But the best knee came from DARPA working
Because that's
towards
what blew my mind, and that's why, like, I'm sorry, like, I'm just like staring at this the entire time.
No,
I'm
dude,
thinking, like,
I'm so stoked that y'all asked me about it because like I'm so proud of it, and we're like still grinding to get it more for more people because like
I feel like that's the accessibility of that feels so superficially or just it limited for no reason, because that there's no reason in my mind that this arm should cost a Lamborghini Huracan.
it's insane, especially when you like.
Where's the cost coming from?
Yeah.
Like yours with. I
And
know
I'm sure
you
your
touched
friend did a
base, like,
great job. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's blowing my mind like why this would cost so much.
I'm guessing because we will. It's hard to
I'm
figure
not
out
gonna
what
bring
order to talk about because I'm like, dude. Even the idea, if you think open the hand, it opens.
So I actually brought because a hand with
a
me.
hand.
Yeah, this is this is I like to educate now and so just because I wish I would have known earlier that I was gonna have to play such a big role in educating people, because like since I was injured such a long time ago, I would have been able to influence people to
Shut up, Eli.
to get into that field, you know, like earlier.
Yeah, see.
But like he was saying, I think that the cost comes from actuators and computers that are within the process, because that has like I think four individual actuators, and it's just that a lot of that you're paying for R&D, so you're paying for the R&D
Shit ton of money.
and so I think that
wild.
the knees, they're able to bring down that cost because there's so many more knee people, and just on the civilian side too, because like a lot of leg injuries are still the survivors stateside for traumatic amputations, motorcycle accidents, car accidents. I was just with I was at this like celebrity softball thing in Dallas with the above the knee amputee who just climbed a mountain in Peru, and she had a knee that wasn't waterproof, and we were talking about that because she can't get the X3 because it's too expensive. That knee that it's still expensive for most amputees. Even military have a hard time getting it because it was originally just created for people that were for special forces guys.
Yeah.
And now they consider it it's so tough that they consider it a specialty knee. So it's like it's an insurance thing that even veterans have trouble getting it, because since it's so tough, they consider it a water knee. And so like this, for example, I just got in a fight with the VA about this. About getting a new prosthetic because they didn't make this, and so
What are you trying to do?
Eli's gonna break the fucking thing.
Like this. That's
No,
Also the knuckles, like the paint job on the knuckles. If you could face that to camera, it looks like the hot bitch from Atlantis, the Lost Empire. But
Hold on, do you get the Space Cowboy thing from Jet?
dude, yeah, no, it's so funny because people call me that on people called me that,
Cowboy Bebop.
not even on my people
Because Jet, his right arm isn't real. He lost it in a policing accident.
Yeah, I got that from TikTok and YouTube. People, before I even got on social media, people were making videos about my arms, and I switched that because I used to, Tejano Space Cowboy. Tejano is just Mexicans from Texas. Like my family is from Texas before Texas was America, and in Mexico, and that came from people calling me that, and I thought that was funny because like just because I would wear I wore a cowboy hat with it, and people were like, oh, like a space cowboy, and I was like, oh, I love that shit.
it's rad.
But just to get to the that is just like it's a fucking Medicare thing, like the insurance. I think that it's insurances and getting that cost down is like part of it's they're not made in America, and I think that there's a bunch of young companies that there's like one in San
It's
Diego.
not made in America.
Yeah, that was my big point. We're
wild.
so proud of that because, and this is not to rub anything in their face because I've worked for them before. They're a $4 billion company. They are the best prosthetic manufacturers in the world still. But having worked for them overseas, I was like, hey man, if you guys made things in America, not only would like this is broken. This I don't have any working hands right now. So I'm waiting on that to get a new one from overseas because they're made in Austria. So the turnover and getting them repaired is really high. But there's a couple of young companies in America that are making prosthetics to that level that are not plastic, and I think that.
Before I handle this too closely, have you jerked it with this?
No, everybody asks about the stranger.
Okay. I feel
this.
really weird putting my fingers all over this.
Like, relief. He's like,
there
I was
are-
wanting to ask that.
Dude, I've been holding back this entire time.
So people that are below the elbow have rubber covers, and I hear that like they do try shit like that. But since I'm above the elbow, I don't have that level of control. So I'm like, I feel like I would just rip it off.
Just guy to guy, I figure I had to ask.
Dude, I fixed this myself with the just some steel cable.
Oh yeah, shit.
And so I was like, it's so jagged. Can you just imagine?
Oh yeah, no, that's a new. What is that? They call that a saint. The piercing on your fucking.
A Prince Albert.
Prince Albert. There you go.
I
Not
like
a
how you looked to me for confirmation.
Yeah, I know. I was like,
the answer to the
why are you looking at
You
Trout?
did. Well, here's the thing. You did. You knew the answer.
Which saint was it that jerked his dick?
Prince Albert.
We always look to Prince Salmon for.
Dude, that's like the number one question on fucking
Saint masturbate.
about that, like the stranger or whatever. And I was like, I know that there's amputees that have rubber covers. This hand, it's open, and that makes it easier for me to repair. So that's why I liked it. But they're closed ones that are all rubber, and that like I know there's some dark fucking amputees out there that have tried that because they've told me about it and they talk about it. And I was like, no, like not me. My injury level's too high, and like
Dude, what's crazy is like to give you props for the art direction though. Like it looks so, dude, an AK with this wrap, this paint, and the blues, like, bro.
yeah, people.
very Borderlands.
I would put
almost.
this up. If you ever get rid of one of these, we'll buy it from you. Just the hand so we can put it.
I don't
in
think
the
we can
background.
afford them. That's
You know what? So that's another issue. It's funny that you say that. I have a bunch of these because the company does make them obsolete. So planned obsolescence.
yeah.
So like it's a software.
Planned
thing.
obsolescence
real
is
issue.
wild.
It's a good rock.
Yeah,
band.
for amputees, it
Metal
sucks,
band.
man. It sucks because like having got into the space a little bit, traveling to like I talked to some guys in Egypt and I want to go to Mexico to talk about this arm. I mean the Ukraine. Some of the places that they're making tougher ones, they're making them tougher because amputees can't really afford them.
Yeah.
Like in America, for instance, you get them like once every 5 years. And so so I have some of these. I did the art I call it Mexican camouflage because it's just I just like on this one literally just camo because my other ones are kind of colorful, and I was like I want an arm that I can hunt with, and I want to. Whenever I was in Africa, I feel really bad in Tanzania. We got like chased out of this village, and I felt really bad because the arm was all shiny and metal. And I felt so bad for the group I was with because like literally like our security was running and ahead of us, and I was like, damn, like I spotlighted us because my arm was so shiny.
Just get like a cloak or something.
Well, I was
Throw it over.
like I had painted a little bit of camo on it, and then after that I was like, I was in the jungle and I was thinking to myself like I saw pictures and I was like, oh, I could disappear. I could make it camo to make it like not because like having a super shiny arm is like. Cool. I mean, like I use it so much, but I was like, I do have that mentality of like, of I don't know if it's ghetto mentality of like I don't like people being able to see me before I see them. You know what I mean? And so like
Childhood trauma.
yeah,
That's what we call it.
it's a getting jumped especially thing like because the training, the boxing and stuff like that. The part that I broke before I went to the Ukraine. Like I've always trained because like especially whenever you're traveling overseas.
I see you adjusting that every now and again. What are you locking that in and out of, and why?
Yeah. So this is
It's Italian.
God damn it!
Brandon, you could do the Trump thing.
for
The best prosthetics I've ever had. The best prosthetics.
Yeah, I think we should have the best prosthetics made in America. I think we do. That is a goal of mine for them to be made in America. Would be really, really cool.
America should have the best prosthetics. Maybe ever.
Tiny ones of it.
That specifically for a long time we were like scared to talk about the inner mechanics of the elbow because we're like worried about trade secrets and stuff like that. But after talking to George, the guy, he's like, this is so hard to build that he wanted me to the Ukraine. He's like, give it away, like show it to people. Like his goal is to build it better so people are not dealing with broken prosthetics that they're like relying on to like feed their families. And so like open sourcing, talking about it is this is how the elbow moves up and down. So it's a pylon. And so typically that would be all inner. That would be located in the elbow. So all my other elbows, it's inner. It's not accessible to somebody to work on, but they're typically plastic. It's typically a plastic gear. And so that limits it. And even sometimes the steel ones, a lot of prosthetics upper extremity are limited by the fact that they try to make them look like arms to contain all of that movement right there. But the materials are not tough enough to do something like that. So like there's a metal elbow that whenever you try to make it steel is nowhere near as strong as muscle fibers are. So people don't realize that. But like if you get a metal pylon like rebar and you like tensile strength is one thing, but bending it, there's nothing like an elbow.
Over and over.
Yeah, it's
like aluminum. That's one of the arguments, like aluminum over polymers, or polymer over aluminum, rather. Like polymer isn't quite as strong,
dude,
as
I
aluminum.
am so glad you brought that up.
Okay, yeah, because it's one of those things like polymers. Even though that they're not as strong as aluminum, they will bend. They will misshape themselves to be able to fit whatever they need to in the moment, and then they'll go back to their normal shape. Whereas aluminum will just fucking bend. It will break. It will like
And
being stronger
on those lines.
Bingo. Being
Once
stronger
you
is
break-
not necessarily better.
Yeah, so once you break or fray carbon fiber, that's why people ask about why metal. And I was like, well, there's a reason all knees are metal. So that's like that gets into a really niche thing. But this was made specifically to protect the carbon fiber socket because I've broken carbon fiber sockets. And carbon fiber is so uniquely fragile when it comes to so when I was on Kilimanjaro, you could see the digs of the obsidian into the aluminum.
Oh yeah.
And it dug right into it. And it was funny because this was originally carbon fiber, but we converted it to metal and cut this part out because we were like, only metal where it needs to be metal. And but I broke carbon fiber wings because it's so fragile that once you drill into it, you actually, you shouldn't be drilling. Like the guy who made this arm was like, man, I can't splintering the VA drilled into this.
Just splintering into your shit.
You're split, and it's poisonous.
Yeah.
Like, people have no idea that like as a material, it's really weird that prosthetics are still carbon fiber because it's dangerous and fragile, especially if somebody's using it for more than a few years.
You ever seen those pictures of the guys who like accidentally put the carbon fiber arrow through their forearm or their hand, and the carbon fiber just splinters out in like 80 different directions? It's awful. Because as soon as you split, have you not seen that?
Yeah, no, I've seen that before. Yeah, just archers doing that shit. That's why, like, if you have an arrow, Eli knows now too. You just got an archery. If you have an arrow, you always like roll it a little bit to make sure it's not splintered. Because if you let it go, it'll fucking destroy your arm.
Or open everything, dude. Arrow, like, it is so much fun, but also you see those little things like that. I was like, well, that's why the only time I won't cheap out, like ammo, you'll buy cheap ammo sometimes. Arrows are the one thing I was like, you know what? I'm gonna spend a little extra money, so just in case it's not opening up and destroying
any
myself.
archery event I've ever been to. They're like, hey, take your arrows, just like roll them down your leg real quick. If it splinters, throw that arrow away. Because it'll just fucking explode your arm. Wild. All I can think about is like how easy it would be to put a gun in that and sneak on an airplane.
Dude, somebody hit me up from. Oh no. Oh that.
Cody, why does your brain go to sneak onto an airplane?
That's okay. That's okay that you brought that up because I get violated so much for the TSA that I'm so used to it. Like
really?
Getting through the airport. I know. I'm like, it's the beard too. But like people will be like,
beard and the Lebanese nose for me.
Dude, whenever I'm overseas, especially with the other arms, like they're like this motherfucker. Like I've literally gone through, especially in Germany, motherfuckers. Like this is why you guys have a reputation. They'll send me through the airport security twice and go to the back room twice. And I'm like, listen, man, there's a couple of guys that German special forces that were, served with us in NATO. They're like cooler, but like the security is like, hey, you get the terrorist treatment. And it's like, but this arm specifically is actually, easier to get through the airport because there's no batteries. So lithium is a real issue, man. I had a arm, the blue arm that I met you with.
Yep.
I got stuck in Germany for like 6 months because I checked it in. And I didn't know you couldn't check it in because it's got lithium batteries, even though they're completely encased within carbon fiber, layers of carbon fiber. It got stuck. But this one, since it's hollow, actually it doesn't go off whenever I go on the scans because they can see everything through it.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, so there is a setup that I have that's shooting specifically that I stopped wearing through the airports because it was so hard to get through. But yeah, it depends on what country I'm in. America's like the worst.
Really?
But not Texas. Texas is like, people usually know who I am. They're like the guy with the metal arm. Like he's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Like your home airports or whatever.
yeah, but then like, cause like getting airports in the U.S. like where if they're like bumfuck nowhere, that's the worst. Cause they're like I've never seen this before. Like they'll wand me, spread my legs, and for a long time I hate holding people up too, so I feel bad. So it's like almost better when they're like take me to the pirate room. I'm like just ready for it. Cause it's like
Meanwhile, they're thinking in their head, they're like, brown guy, beard. You were the bad IED maker.
yeah, I swear to God, it's so it's useful. You know what I mean? It's like it's useful. Like I like being able to like even with a metal arm disappear a little bit because I can fit in anywhere I go. And I speak Pashto a little bit still too.
I'm sure TSA loves that.
Yeah, no, it's not funny. Like I no jokes. There's no jokes. Yeah, it's there's no joking. I like no joking in front of TSA anymore because it's just like. Yeah, they have too much power about it. Yeah, it's just really weird when you get stopped in America and you're like, look, this is, of all the countries that I get stopped in, you're like, man, this is like the one country they'd be like, you would think that would be easier to get through, but
Como estas? Nice try, terrorist.
yeah, because in Africa, like they don't give a fuck. Like in Africa, they're like, oh yeah, man, like you're disabled, whatever. Like they're almost nicer to you because you're disabled.
I mean, try.
Go on, Brandon. Finish it.
Fine. Try playing soccer in most of East Africa without hitting a landmine. So they get it. They understand prostheses.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's real. That's why I was there. You know what I mean? Like to talk about the amputees there. You know,
Thanks for pushing me into that, Eli. Appreciate it.
You're one of us.
Yeah. Ironically, the TSA. Yeah, you're like, I don't know what the goal. If the goals, it is a little bit like obviously the Marine Corps sent me to fucking language school because I looked. When I was in Afghanistan, they told me to tell people I was Persian. Iranian, Mexican.
100%.
Yeah,
You're like,
so,
¿Cómo estás? Shh.
they make up a story.
Assalamu alaikum.
Tell them, yeah, like I had to make up a story about being my dad was from Iran, and I had 3 kids. Just like
Big, yeah, they just go into that culture where it's like,
dude,
big
it's
on
funny.
family.
Yeah, I didn't know that
and
was like that's a thing that they have people do. I thought it was just me, but no, everybody who goes to language school in the Marine Corps and then Special Forces, like that's all they do, right? They're like, yeah, be shady as fuck, lie about everything, like, but it is funny because like that is why they sent me to language school because I spoke my first language Spanish and I look Mexican, so over there you look a little bit. Before I was wounded, I looked Middle Eastern, so
you don't look Mexican, you are Mexican.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a fucking ironically that's some uses of the diversity of the military, super useful for that kind of thing. And there's history to that too, because like there's history to that because Arabs invaded Spain, and so like we have some language structure that's the same, but also looks. So like the nose, it could come from that because Arabs invaded Spain and they left like cognates like mez is table in Pashto, like kameez is shirt. They left language structure for Arabic, and then also like some of the words are the same too. So people are like, why do so many people in the Middle East look Mexican? And it's like, it's because of Spaniards and colonialism and stuff.
They are.
Yeah, it really same genetically. We are kind of the same.
That's it's easy to think that everybody's the same until you realize like history. It's like, oh no, all these places, like there was the invasion of the Moors into Sicily, for example, if you've seen True Romance. History, I read a lot.
No, it's useful.
Yeah.
It's useful because like
It is. It's you get to see like how humanity did spread and conquer. It's like funnels that point to a place, and then that builds into a funnel, and then it goes to another spot.
That's always why I've kind of had an issue with like the 23andMe, like the DNA tests, because it's like, okay, well, you're Mexican, cool. are you 2024 Mexican, or are you 1800 Mexican, or are you pre-Spanish Mexican? It's like all of human history is just a history of conquest and different countries and civilizations melding into each other. It's like, genetically speaking, which version of that country are you? Because if you go on 500-year increments, that is radically different.
Yeah, that's cool. I love educating because I educated myself on it. Like I remember, one of the only times I've ever talked about my story on social media was like on years ago on TikTok, and
today.
The Aztec god arm Quetzalcoatl. Like I remember telling people that I said that I put that the arm was this is from it. That's why it's blue. His color is blue, Quetzalcoatl, and he's the Aztec god of the sun, and his color is blue. And the Aztec god of the sun and war, Quetzalcoatl. He's a very violent god. And I remember people, a lot of Christians getting super mad at me for saying that I thought my ancestors woke me up because nobody saved me, and this light wouldn't stop flickering in my eyes. And my family's from Nuevo Leon, and they're like indigenous to Mexico on one side, and then indigenous to Texas on the other side. And I thought it was a cool history because I was able to. I don't think like a lot of people know that like why. And this is me. I would consider myself Christian, raised Catholic. My middle name is Guadalupe because the Vida de Guadalupe in Mexico. But I was like, people don't know.
A Mexican Catholic? No.
Yeah, dude. And it's like people don't know. Like you have to educate yourself on how that history was spread. You know what I mean? That religion was spread by the sword. Yep. And so people were like, I remember all this hate that I got from Christian. I was like, well, I can't neglect one side of my history and not like know how Catholicism got to Mexico specifically and all the gods. You know what I mean? And but all that, it goes back to some sort of history because like Christmas, you know what I mean? Like that was a pagan holiday.
Yeah.
And so
all Christmas, Easter, pretty much everything we see in a modern sense is it's derived from something that was hundreds of years before us.
Yeah, you get in trouble whenever you don't because you almost always have to like educate yourself on those kind of things whenever you're talking to people about that, and then you have to like go from how much do they know about it enough to be offended.
Would you two quit holding hands?
Hey,
Dude, I'm so glad like
I'm trying to find, dude, there's these awesome
so
renders.
interested in
So
how
it's
this
anime
works.
versions of Aztec warriors and gods, Quetzalcoatl, and like all of them. But this is one. But dude, anime, they did really cool drawings of Aztec gods. They're like vicious as fuck.
There's
You're
a
like, this is
super
dope.
art is a super big because even on my arm, the spear, I have 26 dots there. The spear is supposed to be. We lost 25 Marines without attachments on that deployment. And this is an Aztec spear. And that's why I call it just Mexican camouflage, because I just did designs in camo form. And this is supposed to be an obsidian tipped lanza spear. And but I did like a camo rendering of that. And but it's cool. Like the art in Mexico is like super, super
unique. And I love watching you anime guy, watching it blend with like the Japanese style artwork and then the Mexican
Bleach,
style.
yeah,
And
man.
you're just like this.
Mexico gets so love. I remember when I was talking, I had that arm. I had the leather arm in the Ukraine, and I remember this Ukrainian soldier, double amputee, asked me about this guy on my arm, and it's Emiliano Zapata, and he was an indigenous freedom fighter from Mexico, and he's famous. He's real famous Mexican warrior. And he's like, a famous quote of his is like, I'd rather, die on my knees than
Live on my feet.
Live on my feet. Fighting for Mexican freedom. He was eventually killed. And he's got a famous bandolier. And I thought
I was backwards. It was, I'd rather live on my feet or die on my feet than live on my knees.
Yeah, I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
I was like playing in my head. I was like, maybe it's a weird Mexican term.
dude, he's super famous all over
all
Texas.
you fucking Mexicans over here.
Yeah,
I'm learning a lot today.
I think it's a
Cody goes by as a weed
cool
whacker.
history. And
I want to be like you.
I wanted to learn about your culture, so I went to Home Depot.
I mean, you can't be ashamed because that's the hardest workers in the world. Like now, going other places, like I travel where I'm like, oh man, like where people talk about like me positively. I'm like, oh man, like where I'm from, like the fucking hardest workers in the world. That's why SpaceX is in the valley, man, because it's just the hardest.
Yeah.
The reputation Mexican specifically, the work ethic is legendary all over the world now, and even like because you talk about
And
like
the grass is immaculate.
yeah, I mean that's why I broke this hand mowing my lawn, and I was like it was just something that's like a work ethic that's unique that I think that like people in Texas really appreciate because they're like oh those motherfuckers are just that's a cool stereotype to have where you're like the hardest.
Yeah.
I mean I built that harness. Like people were like, why I got into prosthetics? I was like, because, you can't really let people feel sorry for you so long. Or even if you have valid reasons to like be depressed or whatever, like, that mentality of being like, well, if fucking nobody else is gonna do it, I'll do it myself. That is something that I do take a pride in that cultural aspect where you're just like, nah, I'll work, I'll do it myself.
Don't be a victim.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I could. Oh, you can make the excuses and people would validate your excuses. Instead, you're like, no, fuck that. I still want to work hard. I want to better myself. I want to better even what I have right now to like my day-to-day life. I'm going to make that as best as possible. I'm not going to quit.
Which it was actually one of the first times you ever came across my feed naturally was a video of you basically explaining you're like, yeah, people call me the Tejano, winter soldier and everything. Like, this is so cool, but you're just like, hey, just a quick reminder to everybody, this is actually a disability. Like, there's shit I can't do, and that's kind of fucked up. But the ability to go from something that obviously was a very traumatic experience to having something like just taking on a life of its own and making it so cool and making the best of it that you have to remind people like, hey, by the way, this is it's not great. This was not my ideal situation, but just the idea of making the best of it to the point that people forget how bad it actually is fucking rad.
Yeah, like that came as far as like learning how to talk negatively but positively, because I felt like I never realized I was gonna have to educate people on the VA side of things. Where I was like, I don't want people to know. I never want somebody to go through what I went through with the VA fighting for prosthetics. I never thought I was gonna have to like beg because people are like you're wounded in combat, you get everything. I was like, no, it's not that easy. It's not. It's been so difficult. And talking to other amputee veterans, where now I know how hard it is fighting the VA for prosthetics, and it's become such an issue that I was like, I only start to tell people that I'm like disabled because like becoming a dad, that changed my view of things. Where I'm like, man, like all of like the quiet struggles at home. That, especially as a guy and you're Mexican, like a machista mentality, like you have that thing of like my dad, super silent, like you never heard him talk, would never complain, never talked.
Mexican,
but yeah,
our toxic trait too.
It is a toxic trait,
I just
man.
stay home. No,
great for.
Don't worry, give me the Vicks. I'll put it on my chest. I'll just breathe. I'll breathe. You're having a heart attack, Dad. No, I'm fine. It's good. Dad,
You're having a heart attack.
Dude, it's
great for war, man. We make great warriors, and then as far as like advancing and things and not like passing on like generational trauma and stuff like that. That's I was like, one of my things after my dad passed away and my son was born, I was like, I want to make sure that I like Maya, I think it's Maya Angelou that has a quote like if you don't tell people about your suffering, they'll say that you were happy. I think there's a quote about her. She uses a quote like that, and I was like, so I wanted people to know that I'm like talking about
had
this
it easy
arm,
or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was.
I feel bad talking about like I'm like, hey man, this guy privately funded this arm, built this arm, because of my struggles getting prosthetics from the VA. Let's not talk about the fact that I've had I built my own harness. I went years without appointment. I went years without prosthetics.
It's hard to. It is that. It's extremely difficult to talk about your trauma. I know probably a lot of guys at this table, guys out there, gals out there. It is. You don't want to have the victim. You don't want to play victim. And the second you bring up something, you're like, no, like you feel bad about it for whatever reason.
Complaining.
Yeah, you feel like you're complaining in the military. I mean, even in the Mexican growing up, you're not fucking allowed to complain about stuff. You're just like, nope, I'm going to shut the fuck up. I'm going to just push through it. But it is awesome for the next generation, like your kiddo. And you're like, okay, I need to do this to bring light to it. Because like one of the biggest things, how long did it take for the VA to even start working on a prosthetic for you? How many years?
So I would say 2.5 years. So this
like
is
that reaction.
This
right
is a
there
real issue because
wild.
Other amputees, whenever I tell them this, they're like, "It's insane." I retired in 2015. I've only had 2 prosthetics built from the VA since I retired. And whenever you tell that to people who know anything about, who know amputees, they're like, that's insane. And I was like, yeah, I didn't know that. That's why this guy made this arm for me. Like, I feel bad because I feel like a sense of responsibility talking about it because I owe him and just for other amputees now. And then never wanting other combat wounded amputees to deal with that. I like, it's been such an issue. Like for me in San Antonio, like my congressman got involved twice. And it was like such an issue where they're like, I had to break that mentality of being like, because if you don't complain about it, that's fine. But then like, you know, complain about it so hard to make things happen. And it wasn't until my son was born that I was like, I can't be disabled because my son, you know, like whenever he needs me, you know, and I'm taking care of him alone, I'm like, it just really, really sucks. I always tell a story about like changing diapers with one arm is so hard. I always, whenever my son's mom's not there, I always wear my prosthetic because I need it to be able to carry him and to move him. And like, you know, toddlers, it's so scary. Oh God! Like they have no idea how many times they put their lives in jeopardy. So you have to be able to.
They're just
grab
constantly trying to kill
them.
themselves.
Dude, it's terrifying. And like
2-year-old veterans.
Yeah, it's scary, dude.
Jesus
it's scary.
Christ.
You're like, how did I make it this far? And doing that with one arm, it's like I never felt the need to be undisabled, to mitigate my disability as much as possible until I became a dad, where I was like, this is not just about me. Like I have to be able to get prosthetics so I can be able to take care of my son and be a dad. And it was just something that I was like, never. I would have really continued to try to do it alone myself. And actually, one of the guys that found me to make this arm was a Special Forces veteran who heard my story and heard my dad's story. So he was like so upset by the fact that my dad served in so many wars, and the guy was from 7th Group, and then a lieutenant colonel for 7th Group. They were like, your dad fought so hard in Panama, and for you to still be going through this, I couldn't get. Okay, so one thing was I couldn't get prosthetics made at the Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio, which was built for veterans, and so there was a big thing there that I was
VA
like,
just being
because people
VA,
were
I
like,
fucking hate
people
it.
had
They're
no
definitely
idea.
down to build bigger buildings. They
Dude,
really love that.
I bring it up because I didn't know to educate myself on that. Where I was like, people are like, why talk about the VA negatively? Or I'm like, well, because these are taxpayer fund. Like people
Yeah.
have no idea that these are $1 million facilities employing whole teams. And I was like, there's not that many amputees for them to be saying that they don't have the capacity to build prosthetics. Where I'm like,
Oh, they love
if you
spending
don't-
hundreds of millions of dollars to build a bigger building to tell you no inside.
It's
of it.
Look
insane.
at this giant prosthetic we built,
Dude.
to represent prosthetics.
It's
like,
it's
can I just
insane
get a
because it's
prosthetic
like,
though?
it's like, how can you dedicate? Because I feel like I have a sense of responsibility to talk about it because I'm like, hey man, the civilian side, they're not as funded well as the VA. So I'm like waiting for weeks in between appointments to get it on the civilian side. This guy has nothing to do with prosthetics. He's doing it specifically to advance them, heard my story, get into the weeds with me specifically just to better, to make it arms or whatever for the future. But like, it's so sad when you like, I tell people like, why am I pushing the VA to do it? I'm like, because they have $1 million facility, they have fabrication capacity that small civilian side don't have. And if they're not going to use that, people need to understand that then we shouldn't be spending millions of dollars on those facilities because there's not that many combat wounded amputees for them to be like because I got turned down.
Justify spending it, and then you're
so
the
why do you
one-
have the facilities that are just $1 million? Like Audie Murphy, the VA is huge, and people when I tell them like I have the biggest VA, which has been such an issue for combat wounded amputees, to have such an issue getting prosthetics from what is supposed to be the biggest VA, and I'm like, you have all of this staff that don't do anything, and if they don't want to work. I remember taking part in a study this year with the VA tech with the Army nurse who retired, and heard her telling, I got like a part of this study to improve the VA, and she was telling me about how she was an officer in the Army, a nurse in the Army, and she just got out, and she had appointments canceled, and I had mentioned about getting my appointments canceled for like group meetings, like worker meetings, multiple times, and she was like, that's so weird, like I've had my appointments canceled for the same reason, like just nonchalantly, like 2 weeks for an appointment that you've been waiting 6 months for. They're like, actually we don't have spots, we're working, the doctor's not going to be in the office that day, can we schedule you for this many months out? And I told her that story, and she thought it was so weird because she just got out of the Army, and she's now dealing with the VA side of things, and now helping on the admin side to improve the VA. She's like, I'm literally an officer. I work for the VA. I get out and to help, improve the VA. And I keep hearing this story about veterans getting their appointments canceled that they had to wait months for because the doctor doesn't come in. And I'm like, and when I tell people it's just a work ethic thing, because this guy's a millionaire. This guy is a millionaire. SpaceX, private company, flying all over the world to do all these different things for shorter metal technologies. Is this company specifically for that? And I'm like, how does this guy make time for me to make an arm? And then when I worked for Autobach, they're a $4 billion company. I would work for them in Berlin. I would fly to Germany and back before I could get an appointment for the VA. And I was like, it's so embarrassing to tell that to a tech company where you're like, I can't get an appointment at the VA in time to get my arm worked on. And they're doing this $10 million campaign based around me and my art on my arms. Jesus. And I'm like, it's so embarrassing.
$10 million campaign. And they're like, look.
It's the opportunity.
They just want the photo op. They literally, it's just a photo op.
So
they're like,
that's the shit that
smile.
No, I just said big government.
They're
spending your money wisely.
Well, no, like I couldn't get an appointment for the VA, and the Autobach worked on my arm. The company who built the arms, because they're like, listen, we need you, we need your face, we need this to work.
Private funding.
Yeah, and it's like on the private side of things, it's like because if you don't want to work, they'll fire you, and that's a different thing. I think that structurally with the VA is that people, when they don't want to work, they want to make excuses, or they don't want to come into work there, or whatever. It's so hard to fire them because I've had so many veterans. I mean, even my congressman Castro. I don't want to talk negatively about him because
I will. He's probably going to go to jail.
Brandon's like, I will take that bullet.
I'll do that.
But like, I don't think.
And I hope it happens. I really do.
I don't think he didn't believe my story until I was like, deal with the VA. Talk to them yourself. Like, if I'm having these issues, if I'm lying. And dealing with the VA is like, yeah, it's insane that it's taking so long. And like, I was like, yeah, I don't know why that problem is. And I was like, this is the best VA. This is Texas. Like, I have so much support here. Especially this motherfucker built me an arm, down the road, and he has time to make me appointments. A $1 billion company has time to work on my arm overseas. And I can't get an appointment at the VA in that time. Like, I remember I waited a year for an appointment at the VA, and I was like, listen, there's less than 400 combat wounded arm amputees, and there's 10,000 leg amputees. Like, you guys have the most money out of all the VAs. Like, why do you guys have such a hard time getting people appointments? And I was like, it's just that I think it's just a cultural work ethic thing, because like people who don't want to do their job get hired at the VA. So if you don't because on the civilian side of things, if you don't want to do that work, it's contractor stuff. So it's like they get paid per prosthetic. So they're like, as much work as I do, I'll get that money, right? On the VA, like if they want to take their time, they don't want to do things, and it's hard for them. They're like, okay, well, like
next mine.
I still get my paycheck. Yeah, I still get paid every week. I said that like whenever my son's mom was pregnant, I was like taking care. I was going to the grocery store, working multiple jobs, and I was like, I had this arm. Thank God I had this arm. Everybody's like, why don't you do more crazy shit with this arm, like YouTube stuff? And I'm like, because I use it to work. Like I don't have other prosthetics, and but I just remember talking about like they don't care because they still have their two arms while they're not giving me appointments and working on my prosthetic. They're not disabled, so they don't rely on the VA, and it like makes me sad. They don't care that like that my girl's pregnant or that my son has a disabled dad. They get to go home every day and they get to like cook and shower and bathe themselves with two arms. So they're not thinking about that sense of responsibility that like the guy who made this arm is like, oh man, you're using to carry your son. Like, I'm going to make it the best. I'm not going to break it. I'm not going to let it break.
Well, that's the thing. You're like, it is that human connection that plays. It's no different than policing at your level versus the randoms. It's no different than like if Brandon, you were taking on, like you're already fascinated with that thing, and the above and beyond you would go to help. You're like, cool, I can do. You put a gun on it, but whatever you'd want to do with it, but it's still your engineering side.
That wouldn't be my that wouldn't be my second thought.
But it is that like actual having a connection. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when you have a billionaire like that, he's like, fuck, this dude has his struggles. I'm going to allocate my time to bettering this because, yes, it benefits you, but it's also something you can roll out and benefit others.
It's a sense of pride in engineering.
The thing that's just egregious to me still is thinking about why a singular arm like that costs several $100,000. That blows my mind because I'm just looking at this and like I'm still awestruck because I'm like this. If this was any other widget that we outsourced to Amazon,
insane, man. It's like I look at textiles and the production, and I'm like, I think a lot of it is the fact that it's not made in America, because you're right. Like when I look at things, like if some of the because before I had this arm and that harness, I would work on I would buy tactical things and modify them to be able to use them in a prosthetic sense. And I was like, man, if I could get fucking Nike like the shells that I had, like their ability to make shells and stuff like that, and just to produce high quality products like y'all's metal, all of y'all's equipment, your mic stands, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's
just a lot of that. It's manufactured in such quantity, and so that competition obviously makes things better. But it's just that there's not. That's why our selling point on this arm is that it's made in America, and bringing that price down. This is actually cheaper than the other arms. Because
are there any electronics in it at all?
This is all hydraulic. This is all mechanically operated. And I get confused.
So I'm looking like most of that's like 550. You probably can't see it on camera. That's like 550 cord and
it's so funny. This is the that's the one that has all the computers in it. That one has all the computers in it.
What's the cost on this?
So this would be I mean, 40,000. Yeah, this is
40,000 is way more reasonable. That one you were saying is like $250,000.
Yeah. So that one, this is the issue with this. I think is I don't really. I guess I can be honest. Is that
you be honest?
There's
soapbox.
There's patents.
Soapbox.
Well, it's because I've worked for this company before, and they are the best. But so to give you an idea, they bought this company. They bought the company that made this hand, and so one of the reasons that we've been careful about, because we have been approached about somebody buying this arm and bringing it to manufacturing capacity in America. And we've said no one time, and it's just because experiences in the prosthetic industry made me understand that people will sometimes buy patents just to take it off the market.
Yeah.
And so it's not competing with their product. So if that's that's actually the most
We have
popular,
no experience with that.
So yeah,
can't say anything about that.
Yeah, Unsubs never.
Yeah.
We will own that space.
Yeah, so this is the most popular arm on the market right now, right? So they own 60% of the market share, and so in order for them to, the overhead is so expensive to be able to just change like little colors on that thing, and so for them, all of that R&D that gets done, that like people are like, why is it still plastic? And I was like, I can be critical of them because their knees are not plastic. Yeah. Their knees, they do have a knee that's waterproof, water resistant. This has an open circuit. So this right here is an open circuit. So people are like, I remember one time I was embarrassed at school because a veteran asked me why I was carrying an umbrella with that arm at the time. And I was like, I got pissed because I was like, man, this motherfucker doesn't know. He put me on the spot. All these kids are like surrounding me like I'm a freak because he asked like why I had an umbrella, and it was a Navy kid, and I was like, well, it's because like I didn't explain to him the arm. I was like just it's because in case it rains. I just said in case it rains. You know what I mean? Instead of being like fuck off, I was like, all right, in case it rains. But I've actually ruined a $110,000 elbow getting caught in the rain because they're an open circuit. So this is an open circuit. So there's no battery in this, right? The battery is in the arm, and so this is exposed. In order to get the battery from to move the actuators within the fingers, it's actually in the socket covered by carbon fiber. And I actually covered it myself, this arm. I made it tougher. That's another open circuit right there. And that covers the charge port, and that's where I turned it on.
No.
And I did all this myself. Before I found this guy, I was like, I'm gonna build all that myself. Yeah, because it was like, I wanted
so Mexican.
Yeah, dude, people were like,
you're really like Antonio Stark over here.
Dude, no, I call this motherfucker because people are like, why? I
am worth hundreds of dollars.
Dude, another
hut.
Yeah,
Antonio Spark could have built that in a cave.
You built this in a 1-bedroom apartment with a box of scraps.
I know. It's fun because you do it yourself, and a fucking Mexican mentality. I remember I'm in Austin now. This guy came up to me to like a bug control guy, and he was Mexican, and I was wearing that arm, and he was like asking about all of it, and I was like, I made it specifically. I worked on it, and I was like, if I did leather work beforehand, and I was like, no, like I just wanted to be able to work. I needed it, and I had this opportunity of a lifetime to work for this company, so let me build it myself because I wasn't going to wait on the VA. Because at that time I waited a year for the appointment, and he's Mexican, and he was like, "Oh, you're Mexican, huh?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, it's like, "Cause you just built it yourself." And I was like, "Yeah, man. Like that's, I guess, like my dad was the same way. Like you know what I mean? Like I have so many friends that are like, they have like whole houses in their backyard that they built just because they're like old school. They're like, I'll do it myself." And
appreciate the like inner workings of that, because it's especially, dude. Again, like you're a king cosplay over here.
Man,
You're like, I've watched a few animes. I'm gonna put some leather and make this dope.
Dude, some of the straps that for specifically, I got inspiration for how to put it on from animes, because I was like, in animes, you're like, how do you hold it on? Because it's hard, man.
Give me that high five. Give me.
Oh, bro, who did I accidentally punched this country singer the other day.
What? How do you accidentally punch a country singer?
You accidentally punched
No, because like you forget because I'm so used to fist bumping on this side, because it's weird being I'm missing my right arm, and people ask that because sometimes the videos are like left or right. I switch them because of like bad editing, and but he was like going to give me a fist bump, and like I was second nature because like everybody shakes hands with their right side, and so I took a swing at him because he was giving me a fist bump, and I was so excited. I was at this this softball classic, and you don't think about it because you're like, I did this to him, and I punched his hand, and he was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, I actually never punch with this side. I get so scared of hurting somebody.
Got some weight behind.
But for him, yeah. But it's just like because people,
you're like, fuck
I
yeah.
do fist bump people with my right side just because it's like it's just everybody reaches to the right side, so it's awkward if you don't. You know what I mean? Like. They get that, you get that weird.
The turkey. That's what I always say. It's the turkey.
Bro, I hate
thumb hand.
But missing my right arm, it's so weird because you're like, I get so many awkward interactions. Where you're like, what do I do? And I'm like, I'm confused too. Like, I don't know what the fuck to do. But yeah, like I'm
kiss them.
Yeah, you just like you going for a kiss.
Yeah.
Just kiss their hand. They'll never do that. They go like this. You're like,
well, like sometimes because like I'll get people that get weirded out. They're like, do I shake the claw? And I'm like, that's why I just bump it. And it's like, but sometimes like, you get carried away that you're like, cause like, my best friend, he's a big old guy. He's an MMA fighter. He was with the 82nd, and like, I'll always fist bump him because I know I'm not going to hurt him. Cause he's like, he knows.
he's a big boy.
Yeah. But somebody you don't know, you're just like, it's a weird thing, right? You just brace yourself or whatever. Yeah. But I remember I hit this guy.
You also know the speed to go at a metal object with.
Yeah. Cause I do a little bit of MMA training. And I can only train with people that
this
are really,
armbar's
really
not
good.
working.
Yeah, how does that work? Like
with
MMA wise?
Only good people. Yeah, only good people. Because like I remember I got asked to do this boxing thing and they wouldn't let me use my arm, which I thought was bullshit. Which was like, there's so many different things that are obstacles for amputees. But I remember thinking like they want me to box with one arm, literally with no arm.
Like, cool, I can't protect my entire right side.
Versus a guy who was missing his arm below the elbow, and I was like, well, he's gonna be able to beat the shit out of me. Like, what do you mean? Like, because he's gonna be able to put a glove on that and just hit me. And I'm like here like this the whole time, and I was like, I thought you guys asked me to do this because you saw me training with my prosthetic. Because I was like, just for an exhibition, I'm not gonna hurt anybody. Like, I'm just gonna just like point shit. And my saw gunner was somebody how I have trained with besides my best friend, but because he's a really high level MMA guy. And so I told him like he let me. He's so good. He's so much better than me that like I could throw full swings at him and not worry about hurting him. You know what I mean? Like he was just so good at like dodging and showing me technique and stuff like that, punching pads. It's just like unfortunately, I felt better in the MMA space because they're so good with their bodies that they're good with avoiding things. Because boxing, it's like there is a lot of worry about like me hitting somebody's head. You know what I mean? Like, but I do have an MMA hand that I train with specifically. It's rubber. It would be soft. I do train with to like not hurt somebody.
What is it? Does it bend? Does it?
It's just like they call it a Dragon TD. It was made specifically for martial arts.
It's got spikes on it. So he just
dipped in glass.
I still put it in the glove. I still put it in the glove because this right here, this is like one solid piece of aluminum. So if you miss somebody, you know what I mean? Like if you miss,
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
you still hurt them.
It's 6 hypodermic needles covered in ketamine.
I win again. Fatality.
So I'll use big gloves, big boxing gloves to wrap it so I don't hurt anybody.
Right.
It does that is the one I train with, and I broke that hitting a tree right before I went to the Ukraine.
What are you hitting trees for?
Dude, I was just poor, man. I don't have a gym on the south side. Like all I have
So you were
was a tree.
punching the tree.
Yeah, I was just punching the tree.
Oh, I didn't know if
Instead
you were
of
on a
heavy bag.
4-wheeler or something like that.
No,
You
no,
just
I
hit
was
a tree
training
with,
so
like,
Mexican of you. I can already picture you like, it's. Drinking your coconut water.
You do line work, like you do line work where you're just like you're moving, ducking, and like that under a line, and I patted the tree because everybody's like, why don't I use a glove with the tree? And I was like, because this is still my arm, I don't want to break it, so I patted the tree, wore gloves, and I would just hit the tree, and not like really really hard, but I broke it. It was a part from a bicycle, and so like I remember like 3 days before I went to the Ukraine. I always tell this story about George because he's got this huge facility in San Antonio, and I went there and his secretary was like, George is not here, and I was like, I thought it was funny because I was like, well, he's texting me on the phone right now. He told me to come here I'm going to the Ukraine, fix this arm. I'm going specifically to talk about this arm because these guys want to be able to use it to fight these Russians. So I'm like, of course I'm going to take that opportunity because like one of the only benefits of being me and our background is that I have that I'll fucking go to a combat zone just to sell an arm, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because these guys want to use it to fight Russians. And so his secretary's there and she's like, well, he's not here. And I was like, well, I'm texting him right now. And then George comes out of the back of his facility. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, like my secretary, she's like, she was told not to tell anybody or not to disturb me because I was in a meeting with SpaceX. And I just thought that was so funny because this motherfucker's in a meeting with SpaceX and he's coming here to make this part in 3 days, specifically for me to go to the Ukraine and talk to their soldiers about it. And he was like so insulted by the fact that it broke. Even though he didn't make that part, we used a bike part. And he was like, man, like, I can't believe how you broke it. Because that's his level of engineering.
Yeah.
Where he's like, that sense of pride. Where he's
How
like,
was that able to break?
Yeah, he was like so mad about it.
Yep.
And he like fucking told me like he's like, man, now like this part wouldn't break for to take like 10,000 pounds. And I was like, George, I'm not gonna break. I don't know what you think I'm doing, but like
if you're shadow boxing an oak tree, then that,
yeah,
Jesus,
well, even
that- I
now
kinda
training
see
for
that's-
10,000 pounds.
that's impact.
yeah, because I was like, because people asked the limits of the strength, and I was like, it's limited by my strength because I've deadlifted 400 pounds with it, and that's limited by that. That's me. Like that's like in the weightlifting world, that's like, no, I didn't just go. Exactly. And yeah, so that's the most I've ever put on it before. But after that, I felt way safer shooting guns with it and stuff like that because a crack had developed in it, right? So, shooting guns, it does take a lot of torque. Just the recoil.
Impact torque. It's like
yeah,
that
impact
quick.
torque.
That like
Because it's sharp.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. Gun, shoot. It's, people asked about it, and that's why the Ukrainians were so interested in it because they kept breaking theirs. This is the vulnerable part in the arm right here because there's like a little bit of a spring in there. I don't know if you can tell that absorbs something. This is plastic. So this is a $40,000 hand. This is plastic. So this is super vulnerable to breaking right here. Anytime you break it, those ball bearings fall out. It's completely useless, and it's a huge repair. So it's super fragile right there. And the Ukrainians, for their part, they have an arm that they're making that's mostly metal. It's all metal right here on the wrist, so it doesn't break. But they built it specifically for shooting, and they're like, it's a lot tougher than what this is. But because these are made for people to be able to like do desk jobs and stuff like that. The Ukrainians, I think that a lot of tech's going to come out of there because to prosthetic companies, I'm like an outlier. Somebody who wants to lift weights, shoot guns, swim, do fucking triathlon stuff like that. That's an outlier for them. So they're not making upper extremity prosthetics for people like that. Ukrainians, I think they're going to have a lot of tech come out of there because they are building them to fight wars.
Yeah, go back out into the field. Too.
A lot like the best knees. The best knees were made from DARPA being like, we want our boys to be able to get back in combat. And so I think that me and them got along because we were like shared that sense of engineering integrity. We were like, hey, how did you break this? Well, the only time I've broken that was boxing. And, shooting guns was, I never risked shooting guns, breaking it because it was so tough. Boxing specifically was something. I remember I met an MMA fighter there visiting the hospitals, and I gave him my cowboy hat because he was like so stoked about meeting me because he saw my videos online, and I was like doing training, and he was like, before he was wounded, before Russia invaded, he was, MMA fighter. And then, you get invaded, then you become a fucking soldier. And he was missing his arm above the elbow, and so they made me visit him. So because it was like that relation where he was like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to do these things again. And I was like, well, I had that same thing in me where I was like, just Mexican growing up in the valley, where I was like, you tell people, were like, why do you train so much? I was like, because I have that thing as a man where like you want to be able to take care of yourself with or without a gun, because there's places where you can't take a gun, bars, and like I'll get tried all the time because like motherfucker will be like, oh, like a guy with a metal arm did like, alcohol. People will try me, and so I do train.
So I've never
bizarre.
seen
It's
a
like-
guy with an amputee and be like, Crispy, I want to fight you. Fuck you for your burns. Like,
Bet I can,
Dude,
bet I can with this guy. Like, who the fuck?
I think like I don't know. I think that
you need to move.
People, bro. It's next. It'd be my own. Be my own people.
I know.
Be my own people, man. Like yeah. Like I always tell a story in San Antonio, and this is we're friends now, so I always talk about it. But like this guy was a Marine. You know how fucking Marines are. So this guy was at a bar, and he was actually he was not a detective at the time. He was SAPD. He was a San Antonio police officer. This was years ago. And I remember I was all like peinado, I was all like dressed, I was real dressed nice, and at the time I had an arm so good that I could fit under her clothes, and somebody told him I was a Marine or whatever, but you couldn't really tell because I only had my hand. So whenever my shirt's tucked, long sleeves, all you see is my hand.
Yeah,
sticking out.
Like this.
Yeah, I could be low key, and this guy came up to me. And yeah, like I could be more discreet,
dude. And again, if you're buzzed or you're like afar, I'm gonna glance and not recognize.
Yeah, that one
this.
is brown for a reason. So it's easier to. My reasoning for that was breaking up the shape of the patterns. The colors on it specifically are for me to be able to, whenever it's dark, to be able to look what the fingers are, because I'm tracking that with my eyes because I can't feel it.
That makes sense.
So I look when it's down here, I want to be able to see what directions the fingers are pointing. That was a thing. But this dude got really mad at me because he was like, I heard you're a Marine. At the time, my hair was all spiked, and I was like in a dress shirt, and I was like, yeah, I was, and he was like, well, you don't look like a Marine, and I was like, this, dude, I was like, well, first of all, this is language I don't even like using anymore, but I was like, this little pogue motherfucker is like, you're like that I wasn't a Marine, and he was
fucking dickhead.
Yeah, but that's how Marines are, dude.
You're like,
bro, I love that Marine culture. Like, I love that violence to protect the culture where they're like, you don't look like you're a Marine. I was like, well, I guess I wasn't. Like, if you say I wasn't, I wasn't. I don't give a. I started laughing and walking away, and this guy got so mad. He was like, you stole a motherfucker. You weren't a Marine. And at the time, like,
grabbed your arm.
Dude, he tried to grab me, right? He grabbed me and he started swinging on me. Bro, he tried to hit me like 3 times, and he didn't hit me every time. I was laughing. He got so mad at me because he was swinging on me, but he couldn't hit me. I trained so much. I was like, all I do is train. And I was like, I just kept laughing, and all his friends tackled him. They're like, what the fuck are you doing? This dude's a cop. And he's still a cop. And he's a detective now, but we talked about him the other day because I guess he's a hot-headed motherfucker. But he's a Marine, combat veteran. Like, you understand. Yep. Like, I just thought it was so funny that it would be your own people. Mexican Marine, like drunk, belligerent, trying to fucking start a fight with you because you're not a Marine.
Mexicans, yes.
Yeah, fucking dude, I was like, dude,
Cody understands now. You said brown.
Bro, he was getting so, dude.
Minorities, yes, browns.
Go on.
That's why it'd be your own people. I was like, this drunk ass motherfucker. It was like, but that's who it is, man. It'll be motherfuckers like that where I'll be like I've had people like literally stop me walking out of a bar, or I'm like, and it's the valley. It's growing up where I grew up, where I have that mentality of like oh, no, like I'm gonna have to fucking kill this guy. Where they'll say, I've had like a couple things that are memorable where a guy's like, bro, can I fucking punch you? And I'm outside of a bar.
At least they're polite enough to ask, I guess.
Multiple guys, you know what I mean? Like multiple guys, like where I grew up, I've been jumped before, so I'm like, people say they're gonna do something, you have to like take their word for it.
Yeah.
Just worse. And I'm like, I didn't have a gun on
Bro,
me.
can I punch you?
Dude, it's a weird, man. It's a weird. Like I remember this guy's face. He was a big old steroided out motherfucker.
No punch.
Faux hawk. Yeah, dude. I was like, I think about that, and I was like, oh man, like usually I'll carry like fucking brass knuckles on me or something like that. But I was just thinking like, people are like people see it. I think it's an arm thing. They see a metal fist, a metal arm, and they're like, they want
I've never wanted to fight somebody when I say I'm like, ha.
Yeah, but you obviously you train. The people who train the most are the least violent. I think that people that are like
I don't even think you need to train. You just look like, wow, a disabled man. I'm like,
dude, that's what it is.
Is that way? Like, autism I hear?
Especially with my other arms.
That's wild to me.
My other arms, I'm way more vulnerable because they were made by the VA. So they're terrible, so I can't move as fluidly.
You're like, I am glad you're on the soapbox of just how bad the VA sucks. Because you'll get zero. No, don't defend it.
Because you see my other arm, it's so big and so gigantic, I could barely move it. So I'm like moving so disabled, like I could barely lift it. You know what I mean? So like I was super scared, paranoid of getting in a fight with that arm because it was very hard for me to block on my right side. And that's something that I know. It's because I've been in a few scuffles since I got wounded. I know that the first thing people do whenever I get in a fight is grab my arm, which is fine. Now it's fine because I've trained around it. I'm like, okay, the first thing people do whenever they're gonna, drunk and they grab me is they grab my arm.
Especially now that you use the taser function you built.
Yeah, that's crazy. Flamethrower, taser.
Okay. Speaking on real quick, it looks like the gun that Gary Oldman used in The Fifth Element gave the goblin people. Does anyone else see that?
Is it the
Yes,
pylon?
it's just me. Just like the top part right there.
Yeah.
The forearm.
Yeah.
This forearm is like I just made this forearm to be able to carry things, and it's actually leather under here. There's a Mexican Aztec warrior, there's an eagle warrior and a jaguar warrior under here, but it's all leather. And I made this, and then there's metal under here. But that design, like that's just for me to be able to.
Is there a red button you shouldn't push on that?
No, nothing.
You need to start adding. You hang out with us some more.
Yeah.
Brandon will get you situated.
I'm already sitting here just like,
Now it just blows up.
I'll say that like somebody, I'll get hit up by like random producers and stuff like that. These fucking the Discovery Channel people hit me up about making a gun arm, and I was like
we got a TV show idea. We seen an injured Mexican.
Yeah.
You're a veteran? That's crazy. I don't even care about that.
Yeah, that's why like people are like, why I haven't done more with that, and I was like, this is my arm, and but now like having got into the space where I'm like, fuck man, like the things that you have to do to be able to make sadly, I'm like, now I'll be like, I wish I would have. I said no to so many things before that I wish I would have said yes to if I would have known it to help me get prosthetics from the VA. Because I remember I did the Warrior Games thinking that doing that with the DOD would like help me get a better situation with the VA, and they were like, that didn't help at all. And I was like, fuck, you don't even care about like ESPN. I was on ESPN. Because I was doing like
push-ups. You send in the resume and they're like, cool, chucked
like
it.
Yeah, like they don't. I mean, there's just no. The DOD
fucking wild.
The DOD is much better at making prosthetics than the VA because they care, because they're like worried about getting their people back in combat. And I've had some DOD people reach out to me to be able to fly to DC to be able to, because they're like, hey, we hear the VA is terrible, we'll do this shit. They have like black budgets where they're like, we'll do it out of pocket, whatever. We're not worried about the dealing with the VA bullshit. Yeah, man. One of the guys that came down, I'm honored that he came down. I mean, I don't know if I could talk about it too much, but there was a guy.
Here, what we can do, actually, on that note, is, hey, if you want to hear this story, go over to Patreon. But before, Cody, you're going to close out with that. Where, fucking Sebastian, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for hanging out. We're going to have the after show if you're down. Where do people find you?
Just mostly TikTok, Tejano Space Cowboy, Tejano.
Tejano.
Space Cowboy. Tejano.
Space Cowboy.
Tejano. It's just Mexicans from Texas. That's what Tejano is.
Arrivederci.
Yeah, Arrivederci. Yeah.
God
That's all
damn it,
we're using
Eli.
is your Italian hand.
Yeah.
Using your Italian man.
Speak the second best Italian.
Bibbidi bobbidi boo. Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
I left it in that fucking position too. Yeah.
Cody closes out. Oh wait, we go on, you guys.
No, it's just on TikTok, and I started YouTube because people on YouTube kept asking me to make a YouTube, and I was
Good.
like, I'll do YouTube. Yeah, Tejano Space Cowboy. Yeah.
Go check it out. We have the links below. Cody, do the honors.
Hell yeah. Guys, thanks for joining the Unsubscribed podcast. We're going to be over on Patreon now. For the after show, you're more than welcome to join us. I'm joined today by Eli Double Tap, Tejano Space Cowboy, Brandon Herrera, myself, Donald Operator, the only white guy in the audience. I'm really happy to see you guys on Patreon.
Thank you, white man. Mwah. Bye.